for being here. I know we've got Alana Ross from Storage Auctions. It is 7 a.m. their time, so we are thankful there for those of you that are joining us super early. Brian, so I'm Shelly Harris, the Executive Director of the Missouri Self-Storage Owners Association. We have Brian Wofford. If you can give us a little wave, that would be great. And Marla from Marcus and Millichap also on our board. They're going to kind of co-host today. And then we also have Tommy Nguyen with Storage Pug. We want to give them a huge thank you for putting all of this together and running the technology side. They are an awesome partner to the MSSOA, and we could not have done this without them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All the claps. Yeah, thanks, Kara. I would also like to say thank you to our members for your support of this event. It is extremely helpful. It is since we had to cancel the show in St. Louis, we are excited that we've got the turnout that we do today. It's good to be with everyone. And like we discussed a few minutes ago before we kicked off, if you have questions, if you would like to say hello, if you would like to give smiley faces to anyone, please use that chat function at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions for speakers or panelists or me or Brian or any of our board, please use the Q&A and I will get those questions to who they need to go to. I know that Marla and I had talked a little bit about, and Brian was mentioning it earlier before we kicked off, about the perseverance of our industry. And I wanted to pass it over to them to maybe say a few words about that and just kind of set the tone today for education and just kind of moving forward. So either one of you wants to take that would be great.
Marla, if you'd like to go first, go right ahead.
Sure. It's an honor. We are grateful that we have in the state of Missouri, we have some nationally known vendors that are joining us. And as an association, we are very grateful that y'all are joining us for the next couple of days. We are also grateful to be part of this incredible industry that even throughout a let's say challenging year, to say the least, this industry has proven to be strong. So we're looking forward to sharing knowledge and advice, industry updates today and tomorrow with the association. Brian?
Good morning, everyone. I'm just happy you're here. Our industry, we are constantly having to learn. We're constantly having to evolve. But I think the big involvement, as I said before this started, our managers, our maintenance guys, the owners that maybe don't have a manager, but they're the only one there and they keep going to open their store. And then people like Tommy too, help us figure out innovative technology to keep everything going. So maybe you don't have to be there 7 days a week. Maybe you can be there 5 and help you set up online payments. I think this Corona package has showed us how important it is to accept online payments, to try to get online rents, to do everything we can that if something did happen, we could still function, we could still feed our families, and we could still be profitable. Storage people have always been a very, very resilient bunch. We've always fought through just about everything we've had to fight through, and we've always been great at sticking together. So even though I'm on a Zoom conference, I got 2 questions this morning by text I'll be sharing later when we talk to Jeff Greenberger. And guys, don't hesitate. No matter what you need to ask, no matter what you need to say, no matter, this is that time, just like at the show, raise your hand, say something, get into the Q&A, do what you can to find out the information that you need. But don't forget, after this is all over on the website, every board of director, Shelly too, our phone numbers are on there. Don't hesitate, give us a call. You need us to come by and look at something. There's going to be someone in your area that can come help you. Don't forget, we're here for you, and we appreciate you being here for us. And our vendors that showed up today, thank you a lot. It's actually good to see some, I was going to say older familiar faces, but I don't want to get in trouble, just familiar faces, okay? Y'all have a great day, and let's get us started, Shelly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to kick off and just introduce our vendors and just kind of do a couple of housekeeping things real fast before Tommy starts his presentation at 9:10. So I'll run through our list of participants today. And I would go in the order of who I can see on my Zoom screen, but then I might miss some people. So obviously, Tommy with Storage Pug, our main sponsor today. We've got Kara and Trace and let's see, Weston with Storable. So we're glad they're here. We were supposed to be seeing Pete with storageauctions.com, but I know Alana's with us on chat, and then Lonnie will be here a little bit later. Pete and his wife welcomed their first child on Friday, so he passed his presentation duties over to Lonnie. So Marla with Marcus and Millichap, I'm glad you're here. Mo Kruger with Live Oak Bank will be joining us in a little bit. We've got Tony Nacarado with Tenant Property Protection.
Morning.
Wave. Good morning. Cindy Ashby with Janice and Dynamic Self-Storage Solutions will be speaking tomorrow. Alex Herbs with Herbs Management is here today. They are one of our newer vendors. Larry Goldman with Argus and his partner Ben Vestal will be joining us tomorrow for a vendor spotlight. We've got Tim Shorn with Track Right Door. Give us a wave there, Tim. And then Mr. Bob Cortez with Storage Structures.
Yep.
All right. I don't see Kevin McQuaid with Ponderosa on here yet, but he will probably be here tomorrow. So with that, if everyone got one of these lovely brochures in the mail, you will be able to follow along with us with the schedule tentatively. We are going to stick to it as best we can. Also, prizes for the vendor hall. Another big thank you to our vendors for throwing those in. We've ended up with 5 pretty awesome prizes that are also listed in this mailer. We've got an Amazon gift card that Argus sent over for us. We've got the Yeti Hopper Flip Cooler. There's a $300 value, so we're pretty excited to give that away tomorrow morning. And then the other Visa gift card, which came in from Tenant Property Protection, and $50 gift cards, Amazon and Visa, that we'll give those away tomorrow after we conclude as well. So today at 11:30 when we wrap up, please head over to the virtual vendor hall. So with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Tommy so he can get started. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Thank you, Shelly.
You're welcome.
All right. Good morning, Brian. Thanks for the intro, sir. I'm glad to see your beautiful face. So all of our wonderful panelists, if you'll mute your mics and turn your videos off for the recording, we'll dive in. But just a quick little 30-second reminder. At the end of today's main event, there will be a link that you already should have in your email, but I'll also post it in the chat to the virtual vendor hall to hang out with our lovely vendors. There's 6 wonderful booths. All you have to do is go here and click on each of these links to meet these people. Shelly, correct me if I'm wrong, for everyone that you check in, your name will be entered for a chance to win some of these lovely prizes.
That is exactly right. Just go to your hall page, make sure you visit a handful of booths, preferably all of them, just to say thank you to our vendors for helping us to put this on. And then your name will be in the drawing for 5 prizes.
There we go. So don't forget to do that. And also network and meet your awesome, lovely vendors. So, all right, without further ado, Shelly, thank you again. So today, my presentation is on value pricing. This is a term that's been thrown around quite a bit in the industry in the last couple years, with names like Warren Lieberman really leading the charge. I mean, he's done this for multiple different industries. Now he's doing it in self-storage. So I want to give our Missouri friends just an intro to what value pricing is all about, and potentially some ideas on how to do it, and really just answer the question, what is value pricing, right? So let's dive in. So some tips to think about when you think of value pricing. Number one, really, at the end of the day, it's about optimizing that rental experience for your customers, right? And Brian said earlier, like just some of the things that COVID has kind of presented to us as storage operators is, yeah, you just have to now put tools and technologies in front of your customers to make it easy for them to find you and do business with you at the end of the day, right? And then also, number two, in addition to optimizing the flow for your customers, a lot of it is about optimizing the revenue at your facility, which we're all about optimizing revenue, but value pricing, the kind of the magic sauce to it is it allows you to optimize the revenue on a per unit basis, which I will get into. And last but not least, it's about treating your customers how they want to be treated. So at the end of the day, perceived value really just puts your customers in the control seat and the driver's seat to let them do business with you how they want to do business. So just keep these thoughts in mind as I go through this presentation, and I'll reference back to each of these as we go along. So let's think about this. Let's look at some other industries, right? So think about the last time you booked an airplane ticket, or last time you booked a hotel, or last time you booked a rental car, right? Now, it's probably been a while since all of us have done these things. I know I have not personally traveled since like February. I think the last trip I took was to Orlando for the Florida SSA. But I did all three of these things to go to Florida, and I was introduced with value pricing at each step of the way. So consumers, people who rent storage units, which is everybody, they have been hit in the face time and time again with value pricing. It's just that they have not historically had the opportunity to do this in self-storage. So this screen should look very familiar. I took a screenshot of Delta's website this morning, pretended to fly to St. Louis. This is what value pricing is. It's at its core basic, the principle is give customer choice when it comes to what they care about. What does the customer value, right? Value in this sense is not how valuable it is to you, the business owner, or how valuable it is to you, the storage manager. It's how valuable it is to the customer. So when you're flying, you think about value here. So this is how Delta does it. They have basic, they have main, they have comfort plus. They also have first class and business class, depending on the flight. And what it comes down to is it lets me as the flyer, as the consumer, as the customer, I get to decide if I'm okay with basic, or do I want that little upgrade to get a little extra leg room, right? So me, I'm 5'9", 5'8", 5'9". So I'm not a super tall guy. My two business partners are both 6'3", right? And so for them, typically the little cramped seat in the back of the airplane is typically not the most comfortable for them, especially when we're doing long distance flights. And so when we're doing a business trip, like I usually don't mind getting the cheap seat, and we'll typically do an upgrade. Or when I'm traveling with my wife and I want to sit next to her, because a lot of airlines will assign you a random seat. If I want to sit next to my wife for the whole flight, which I typically do, we'll have to upgrade. And that's fine, right? Because in that moment, the value is there for me. So that is the core concept of value pricing, is letting the customer decide what they care most about. So I showed you the Delta, but we've seen this in every other industry. You know, when you're booking a whole hotel room, do you want the king bed? Do you want the queen, right? It's the same room, but the amenities inside are slightly different, and it lets the customer decide to pick what's important to them. Or when you are renting a car, like I mentioned earlier as one of the examples, do you want the Corolla, or maybe for an extra $10 a day, do you want the Camry, right? Or an extra $20 a day, get the sport utility vehicle, right? So whatever that upgrade process is, what's awesome is they offer these upgrades throughout the checkout process, throughout the e-commerce process, throughout the process of me giving you money. You're giving me these upgrade options. And the key concept around this as well is there is rarely, if ever, and I can't think the last time I called to book a hotel or called to buy an airplane ticket. In my lifetime, I don't think I've ever called anybody to buy an airplane ticket. Everything is done online. So the key concept here is that all of this happens behind the scenes or naturally without any human involvement from the business owner. And in these other industries, this is a stat that was given to me by Warren from his time in the airline industry. 20 to 25% of customers upgrade when given the choice. So think about that, right? So you've got your 10 by 10s, all your 10 by 10s, and I don't know what the prices are in Missouri, but let's say they're $100, right? That's pretty standard pricing. You've got 100 10 by 10s and they're all $100, right? But imagine if you had some that were slightly more expensive because they had different amenities. That's what value pricing is to self-storage, and let those customers decide what they care about and what is super important to them. So I'll take a quick break and just remind everyone, if you all do have questions during this presentation and also any of the presentations from our lovely speakers today, there is a big Q&A button at the bottom of Zoom. Click on that Q&A and submit a question. We will get to all these questions towards the end of the each of the speakers. So just so y'all know. All right, so that's it. Let me carry on. So let's talk value pricing in self-storage though. So I gave you some examples. I talked about how it's all about the upgrade process during the shopping experience. Let's look at how value pricing can be applied into our industry, self-storage. And so at the end of the day, different customers actually just value different things. I gave you the examples for airplane tickets, right? And I'm the same person, but I might buy two different tickets depending on the kind of flight that I'm taking, right? For a business trip, I don't really care. I will sit anywhere. It doesn't matter. But if I am traveling with my family or my wife, I will want to sit next to them. I will get that upgraded to be able to pick my seat, right? And also think about luggage. Maybe I need to upgrade for extra luggage, or I don't have luggage, right? So those are all the different things. So different customers care about different things, and the same customers might care about different things depending on the moment in time and what is important to them that day. So just keep that in mind. Number two, I mentioned earlier, value pricing is going to allow you to sell similar units at optimal price points. I said earlier in my very first slide, and it is you're able to optimize your revenue not on a per facility basis, but a per unit basis. Right? We often think about value pricing or revenue optimization or revenue management on a per facility basis. Value pricing, again, lets you do that on a per unit basis by offering similar units, but at different and optimal price points. And last but not least here on this slide, you just let the customers choose to pay more if they want to pay more, right? Let them choose to pay for the more premium or the more expensive unit if that is important to them, right? So present your units in that way. And in this talk, of course, I'm going to give you ideas and tips on how we've seen other industry, other self-storage operators are doing it today, some advice. But here's the thing. The operations, the facilities who are doing it out there, and there's hundreds of these folks doing it out there, and some of the biggest names are doing it. And of course, the REITs have been doing this for a long time, right? And some of their tactics can get very, very complicated when it comes to that revenue adjustment and revenue management, but you don't have to get that fancy with it is really my key point here. We can do it in a very similar way and still get a lot of these revenue results. But here's the thing. When customers are presented in our industry, so I said earlier, 20 to 25% of people upgrade. That's airlines, that's hotels, that's cars, that's those industries. In our industry, the stats show that 30 to 40% of people will choose to upgrade to a higher price unit because they find that unit is better for them. They prefer that unit. Whatever the reasoning is, this is what value pricing can do for self-storage. So this is a concept that was sort of pioneered, not sort of, it was just pioneered by Veritech Solutions. Again, I've mentioned Warren Lieberman's name a few times, but he cut his teeth, I think, American Airlines. So back in the day, before airlines had this whole concept of value pricing, he was part of their team of how can we present this to consumers to where it's not difficult, it's easy to understand, and also, of course, optimizing the revenue for the airlines. So this is a framework that he teaches, and honestly, I think it works really, really well. So this is what it comes down to: is you want to have a 3 option when presenting your units. 3 options kind of, typically steer customers towards that second tier. You're going to get, ends up being some of your most popular units is that best value. But standard, best value, premium, good, better, best, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, right? Whatever you want to name your 3 tiers, that is typically how it's done. And the way that these things are described is like your standard units. Yeah, you're going to have your lowest prices on those standard units. And those are the ones that are going to be published on the website or the street rate, right? When somebody calls and say, hey, what's your price for a 10 by 10? Of course, you might want to ask them, why you want to store. I mean, you're a good manager or a good operator, that process. But when it comes down to it, you can ask the customer, you can tell the customer, yeah, we do have 10 by 10s and they're $89. It's a competitive rate, right? But also we have other units that might fit your needs better, right? So an idea of best value or the best or better value is like, it's a balance of convenience and price. This one's closer to the gate, or closer to the front door, or closer to the office, right? Those are things that make that second tier so awesome. And then last but not least, you've got the best, the Mac Daddy, right? You've got the premium units, the deluxe units, right? These are most convenient, available. These are the closest ones to the entrance, right? These are, if you are in a multi-story operation, which we're seeing more and more of, these vertical big old honking facilities, the first floor units are typically the most desired. So there might be a premium to rent at the first floor, right? Or vice versa. I have operators in Nashville whose third floor units are the most expensive units because they're selling security, right? And they're able to do that because they have a big old honking elevator that is super convenient to get in and out of. And so these are all relative terms, right? And so and here's the other thing: you don't need a big modern Class A climate control 4 or 5 story building to offer this kind of value pricing. I see a lot of operators who have just traditional drive up outdoor units able to implement some version of this. And again, I've got a slide where I give you some ideas and advice on how you might go about doing this at your own facility. But the key point here, so this is one framework. There's a gazillion ways to do this, but this is one simple way of doing it. What's awesome is it's not about statically assigning these prices. It's dynamically assigning these prices, right? So what might be a better unit today, tomorrow might be the best unit, right? Because of the units that you have available, these best value, these better units, today it is the best one that's on the lot. And so that one might get bumped up. And so it is technically the closest unit to the door, right? And so you're able to offer these things. Now that said, that the algorithm and the thought process and the management that goes behind that is pretty complicated, or can be complicated, or it can be as simple as, hey, these are my group of good, my group of better, and my group of best, right? So you don't have to stress out. So one question I typically get during this section is like, what is the price differential, right? And what I've heard Warren say is there's typically a 10 to 12% increase on a per tier. So let's say that our basic 10 by 10 is $100. The better value might be $110, $112, up to $115. And then the best value might be $125, $130, right? But again, there's no rules. I've got a group over in Texas that's using value pricing right now. And I've got a little story to tell about them. But their cheapest unit is $109. Their most expensive is $150. So there's a $40 difference. At the end of the day, it's a 10 by 10, right? At the end of the day, inside the unit, it's the same space, but customers want convenience. They want ease of access. And so if you offer your units this way, this is a nice, easy way for you to just increase revenue while still being competitive if you are in a hyper-competitive market. Like if you're in St. Louis and you're just hitting it out there with all the big guys and REITs and all the local competitors who are doing a great job, you can now kind of get best of both worlds. You could have your cake and eat it too when it comes to competitive pricing and premium pricing. And of course, and when I talk to any operator, they don't want to be the cheapest pricing anyways, right? And so this is a great way to start, again, be sort of double dipping and or just having the best of both worlds. So this is one framework, again, pioneered by Veritech Solutions. Talk to those guys. At minimum, Warren will at least share with you a years and years of knowledge and insight on how all of this works. What I'm presenting to you today is a much more simplified version of how you can get started in value pricing. But really, to me, the benefit, in addition to giving the customer a great experience, letting them pick what they care about, and helping operators increase their revenue on a per unit basis, it really, at the end of the day, really just empowers your store managers, right? There's no concept of the hard sell, right? Because one of the first questions I get, aside from how do you price it, is like, how do you sell it without being like a used car salesman, right? Like, how's this natural? It is natural, right? Because now you're giving customers the choice. Delta is not hard selling me into getting the Comfort Plus ticket, right? Enterprise is not hard selling me to get the Camry when I'm shopping online, right? And so all of those things just naturally happen during the shopping experience, and I get to decide if I want that, right? And on top of this here, many customers, believe it or not, are typically first-time renters. When we did a survey recently, it's about 50-50. And I know that's going to differ from market to market and season to season. But many customers, this is their first time renting a storage unit. So they actually don't know what's important to them, right? And so giving them choices is in a way educating that customer. And it's it's always been our experience that educated customers convert better and are a better customer longer term. Second bullet point here too is by setting up your units and setting up your facility in this manner and thinking about your units in this manner, you actually help customers kind of anticipate their needs, right? Before they ever rent, so that you don't rent a 10 by 10 that is in a dark hallway down that takes 4 minutes to get to, because that one was the cheapest unit. But then it turns out that customer really cared about, hey, I've got movers coming and I don't want them to go back and forth for too long. Or maybe they really care about well lit, which is a very common request. Is like, hey, I want a unit that has a light in front of it, that is super safe, super secure, and that I feel comfortable when I am in and out of your facility. So if you knew that from the beginning, then you can now present the right option to the right customer, but still, again, letting them be the driver and letting them decide what is important to them. But if you think about it, if you don't think about your facility in this way, and you think all 10 by 10s, all 10 by 20s are the same, it doesn't educate you or your managers, and it definitely doesn't educate your customers on what they might find to be super important. And then here it is. The store manager actually should never engage in a hard sell. If a customer doesn't want a better lit unit or a more closer unit or convenience, it's no big deal. That's why we have 3 tiers, right? Or 4 tiers. I've seen groups that have 5 tiers. I recommend 3. So does Veritech. There's some psychology behind, 3 options. But the manager should never hard sell the customer. Present the options and let the customer pick. And again, Delta, I keep going back to Delta because that's the experience that all customers have been exposed to. And it's not just Delta, American Airlines, Southwest, whoever you fly with, they all have a similar experience where the airline just presents the data and let the customer pick. And then last but not least here, it's all about guiding the customer through your facility. And honestly, they will prefer. And when I tell this story, a lot of times owners and managers will just, they have had this experience. Think about the last time you gave a tour. Now, I know with COVID, physical tours and those sorts of things may not be as prevalent as they used to be, right? But let's say you do have a tour and you do have a little golf cart that you're driving the customers around. Customers all have in their mind what they like as soon as they step on your property, right? And so you just guide them through and they kind of just self-select, right? And so, I want that unit over there because it was so close to the gate. Oh, no big deal. So that one is tier 2 or tier 1. And then it lets the customer decide, do I want cost? Am I a price conscious shopper? Or am I a convenience-based shopper? Or am I a mix of both, right? Because customers don't want to be sold to. They don't want to be pressured into making a decision. Just give me the options and let me be the educated customer. Because like I said, educated customers are going to convert better, and they are ultimately, for the operators, a better customer. So no hard sell, please, no hard sell. All right, so I've got some stats. I've got some metrics here that we've collected over the years on really online rentals and online activities. And so these were stats from last year. We ran a study on a number of locations in different markets, from busy to in an MSA to rural. And these are some of the numbers that we collected. And 35% of leads rentals come from the internet. This was summer of last year. So over a third of your customers are coming from the internet, right? Whether they're coming from an aggregator like Sparefoot, or coming directly from your website, or finding you on Google My Business, wherever they're finding you, their journey starts on the internet. It does not start drive-by. It does not start phone call. It does not start by referrals. I mean, they do. I mean, obviously this chart's broken down pretty nicely here. It's a good distribution, but ultimately your new renters are coming from the internet. And so I've got some trends here as well. So this is a couple groups, Freedom Storage Management up in Pennsylvania, and a group called 5 Star Storage up in North Dakota. These are some of their stats. As you can see here, the percentage of rentals and reservations have increased year over year. And I'm excited to run just aggregate stats for 2020. I know just in the, so yes, I mean, you can kind of see here, the trend is that more people are going to want to rent from you online. And if you're showing up where they're shopping, that's what it's all about, right? And you hear in our industry all the time, and I've heard Brian say this, it's all about location, location, location. Well, I'm telling you that the location is not just physical location, it's your digital location as well. And to the point of August of last year to August of this year, the per store lead count when it comes to online leads, 2.4 times more this year compared to last year. Now, COVID has a big part to do with that, right? Customers are just more contactless conscious. Like they're much more aware, and they don't want to necessarily do a lot of in-person activities, which totally understood, totally makes sense. But this was pretty wild to see that a per store average was, per store lead count was 2.4 times more this year than it was last year. So pretty wild to see these kinds of stats. And as the year rounds out, we'll be publishing some more aggregate 2020 numbers. So when we did a study in July, so July this year, July last year, we saw a similar increase. It was around 2.2x number of online leads. So again, that's a combination of COVID, but also a combination that just consumers are just much more, comfortable, right? Shopping online for self-storage. It's become much more of a trend, especially now that you've got big old groups like CubeSmart with their online rental tools, Life Storage, who's been doing it for over a year, and you've got folks who have been doing online rentals for even longer than that. It's just now a lot more prevalent of a mode of e-commerce, or a mode of commerce for our industry. So these numbers are not going to go the other way anytime soon. So the reason why I bring these up is there's a concept of the web rate. There's a concept of online discounts, right? And so let me just step back here. If, this is 2019 stats. I know just by doing a cursory glance across about 100 different stores, the numbers are a lot closer to 50 to 55% of all leads this year coming from the internet. So if half of your leads are coming from the internet, and you are giving your best rate on the internet, what does that say about your revenue, right? So you're saying, well, the majority of your customers are coming from this one source, and that is the best price source. That doesn't make sense on a spreadsheet to say, okay, how can I optimize my revenue when you're giving away 40% of your revenue just to get people in, right, from the internet? And so the idea here is, how can you kind of have best of both worlds by having competitive online web rates and offer premium units online? So, of course, the answer is, as you can imagine, value pricing. That's what this whole conversation is about. So, the question is like, should I even do this online? And obviously, we think the answer is yes. And so, I want to tell you a quick real life story. This is one of my favorite groups that I've got a chance to meet. I've got some great groups in Missouri too, but this one is a group in Texas, and they're in lease up mode. In a pretty competitive market. They're in a suburb right outside of Houston. But here's what's awesome. So far this year, 43% of all of their renters upgraded not only to a more expensive unit, to the most expensive unit when they're shopping online. So nearly half of their units, of their customers, are taking the most expensive option because they find that option to be the most not affordable. It's not the most affordable. It's the most convenient. And in some of those cases, those unit differences, you can go from $100 all the way up to $150. So in some scenarios, they are increasing their revenue on a per unit size basis by 50 to 100% more which is incredible, right? All while able to show their cheapest rates online. So for the cost-conscious buyers, yeah, you can have the $100 unit, but the ones who want convenience, they're going to pay a premium. They're happy to do it because it's all laid out in front of them. There's no hard sell. There's no trickery. It's just all there. And awesome. The other thing is too, so far this year, 85% of all of their rentals have come online. And so they are much more motivated than I'd say your average facility to offer value pricing, because otherwise they would have only rented cheap units on their website, right? And they don't want that. I mean, of course, you want to lease up, especially in your lease up mode. You want to lease up every unit, but you don't always want to have to offer the $1 promo or the $20 off discount or whatever, all the various promos that operators are doing these days to get customers in. I love discounts, don't get me wrong, but you also want to be able to offer your units in a way that customers will just opt in for a better unit if they want it. And often better for them equals more revenue for you as the operator. So this was pretty cool. And here's the thing, the way they do it, they don't even do dynamic pricing. You know, I talked all about that dynamic. Literally, this is all they do. They just straight up list out, hey, this is my cheapest unit. This is my middle tier. Oh, and if you want the most expensive, have it. And the only thing that's really different is like the most expensive is first floor. Right. And so you don't have to be that fancy with your value pricing to get the effects of value pricing. Now, of course, I would argue, and so would Warren, that the operators who are able to do all the dynamic and do, you know, you can squeeze all the juice out of it if you're able to do that. But that said, at the end of the day, you don't have to be that fancy with it. So that's what we've seen, and it works really, really well. So now you know, like the effects. You know the revenue effects, you know how it impacts your customers. The last few minutes here, I want to actually show you how do you do it, right? How do you get started doing value pricing? And now, of course, I know a big focus of this was like, how do you offer it online? Which is a big part of where your customers are coming from. But even if you're not ready to bring this concept online yet, that's okay. You can do this in store. You can do this. You can train your managers. You can train yourself. You can get educated on this online or offline. So check this out. So I said earlier, like, you know, this is the norm. This is how today works, right? The norm is you're going to offer the cheapest units online. You're going to, you know, your customers are overwhelmed with so many options. Like you see, go to a website and you've got 82 unit types. You've got 4 different 10x10s. There's no way to discern what, you know, which one's which, right? And same thing when they come to your store. There's just so many options. Simplify that process. So that's what today's norm is. And then the third bullet point here, revenue optimization is such an afterthought, especially if you're, you know, if you're in the audience today and you're leasing up. I applaud you. Like, let's get you leased up. And leasing up is it's not easy. It can be fun. Mostly it's not fun. The bank is going to, you know, Mo knows this over at Live Oak. The bank doesn't stop calling just because you don't get customers, right? And so in that scenario, your job is to get leased up as fast as possible, which leads to this vicious cycle of like, oh no, what about revenue optimization? Like, you know, I've got optimal occupancy for units and square footage, but my economic occupancy is trash. Oh no, what am I gonna do, right? And so that's the norm. That's how operators work today. And it's not that this is, you know, the worst thing in the world, but there's got to be a better way, right? And so the idea here is we imagine that, hey, if you offer this value pricing, you can now start emphasizing benefits, right? You can give customers the best price, the best benefits, the best features, whatever they care about, you can now offer it. And ideally, there's a seamless integration with your software. Make this as pain-free and painless as possible. And of course, also make it where customers can shop online. I'll add one other thing here too. It's like value pricing should let the customer drive. And I've said this many, many times throughout this conversation, but if you shop at a big REIT and you show up and you want this unit compared to that unit, the manager doesn't really have a say in what that unit costs. It's whatever the software says, right? And so if you train yourself and have that mentality of like, yeah, this is the 20% premium unit, this one's the cheapest unit. Which one do you want, right? Because this one has XYZ, this one does not, right? And so get yourself in that train of thought and that way of thinking about your facility. You're just gonna make more money. And so this is a quick little 3-step way of doing it. Number 1, make a list of all your units. You know, your software can probably already do this if you're using any of Storables products or anybody else that's out there. I mean, your software can give you a list of your units, or just get a spreadsheet. I'm a huge fan of spreadsheets. I love software, as you can imagine, but I love spreadsheets. And so just get a spreadsheet and then just do a walkthrough of your facility and then have a rubric and grade each unit, right? And your rubric can be A through F, 1 through 10, or as simple as good, better, best, right? And just go through and just grade each unit. And your rubric can be as simple as some of these items here. You can include as many or as few. Like the folks in Katy, Texas, Fulsher Bin, my case study, their only measurement as far as what makes one unit better than the other is what floor it's on. That's literally their only measurement, and it works for them great, right? But these are some other ideas here. Is it closest to the front desk? Is it closest to the gate? Is it closest to the elevator, right? Is it easy to unload a big truck? Do you have 24/7 gate access in some of these units? Are the doors wider, right? At the end of the day, put your mind, it's like, we're not just renting space, we're renting or offering a solution to someone who's having a real problem, right, when they're shopping with you. And so do a walkthrough, keep these things in mind as a rubric. And so this is a very simple way of starting to think about your facility from a value point of view. And again, value is not value dollar wise, although it helps your revenue. Value is in what does the customer value. And the best way to know that, to be honest, is just like ask your customers, what do they care about? And I'll you know, just from our own focus groups and interviews with consumers, people who rent, that is, they love having the unit that's closest to the gate. They love having the unit that the manager sits at and sees every day, right? It just gives them that sense of security. So these are just some ideas so you can start building out your own value pricing infrastructure at your facility. There we go. So I think those are the key things. These are my key takeaways. I do want to save a couple minutes to answer questions, but at the end of the day, it is about customers' experience. And also to know that like customers these days are just very tech dependent. I think Storable posted a fun little graphic the other day about all the different generations of people. The kids today, right? The kids who are like in high school, grown up today, they're not just like tech. They don't just love tech. They're really like their life is dependent on tech. And Brian at the beginning of this conference gave a talk, shared about how his kids are in Zoom for school, right? I mean, they just know technology as the way to live, right? The way to be part of society. So it's not going anywhere. And so the sooner we embrace it, the sooner we can start just offering better services. And then, of course, drive revenue. And then something I've learned along the way, it's just something called the platinum rule. I learned this from a guy named Jim Mooney. But it's like treat others the way they want to be treated. We all know the golden rule. It's like treat people like you want to be treated. We're in a place now where like everyone has their own preferences, and you want to be able to put yourself in their shoes as much as possible. And my honest opinion is that that's what value pricing allows us as an industry, and you as a storage operator allows you to do just that. So thank you, y'all. Appreciate your time hanging out with me today. I'm going to be hanging out with Shelly and Brian and Marla the rest of the day in the background. If y'all need me, my email's super easy, tommy@storagepug.com. A ton of other like little resources, just like this one, storagepug.com/resources. You can find us online. Just Google StoragePug and we'll probably be there. But yeah, I do want to have spend a couple minutes answering any questions or comments that anybody has. But Shelly, thank you. And Brian and Marla as well. Thank you for having me out today and let me be a part of the MSSOA virtual conference.
We are so glad you're here, Tommy. Make it fun. I'm excited. We had a couple questions, or at least one question come in. Let me pull that up for you real quick.
Thank you.
I tried to start my video. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, there I am. Okay, so let me pull that question up for you. It came from Mr. Mike Powers. He says, if you are out of the lower tier units, is it recommended to keep the pricing the same? The competitive pricing would possibly be higher than the competitors.
Ooh, Mike, that's a good question. So I won't speak for Warren, but I'll say what he told me is that it should adjust, right? So if you're out of the best unit, you should adjust that's the whole dynamic element of it. Your value pricing should adjust accordingly based on your unit availability. So that said, that could bump your cheapest unit up to a much more expensive unit compared to the competition. But at the end of the day, if you are at 98% occupancy or 95% occupancy, then the competition is not someone when we have to worry about as much, right? And so it kind of is, it feeds itself in that regard. But that is the recommendation from what I've heard from Warren and what I've seen other operators do. But also, you can keep it simple. This is the thing. It's like there's no rules. You do what feels right. And so recommendation would be, yes, to adjust your pricing, but you know your market better than I do, and you know your market better than anybody else. So it's up to you to decide. So.
Got a few more minutes for some questions. Okay, so this one came in from Marcia Pope. She says, all of our units are non-climate control, cameras and lights good all over the facility. What suggestion do you have for pricing?
Ooh, Marcia, these are my favorite facilities to offer value pricing, right? It changes your entire mindset of how you look at your facility. So think about the corner unit, right? A lot of these drive-up buildings or outdoor units will have the corner unit. And think about all the customers who have always wanted that little that corner unit as they drive in, because it's a little easier to get into, right? So that corner 10 by 10 might be a 10, 15, 20% premium compared to your standard 10 by 10. So that's one idea of way to start building your rubric. And I also say this, and I know in my slide I gave like 10, 12 different examples of ways to build your rubric. Keep it simple, right? Just pick one or two of those things. So yeah, corner units can typically be a premium. The other way to do a premium is, and the most popular way for a drive-up facility, closest to the gate. You can't, your mind will be blown by how customers just want to not have to drive all the way to the back of your facility, right? And so your cheapest units can be the ones that are all the way in the back, least convenient, even though it has everything else, the lights, the cameras, all the stuff that all of the units have, but then you can just sell it based on proximity and let the customers choose. And again, no hard sell. So Marcia, thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, we've actually had a couple more come in. So this one's coming from Hans Wedding. He says, can zip codes help determine pricing strategies?
Ooh, Hans. All right, so I'm gonna take off my expert hat, because I don't have the expert hat on pricing optimization for regions, right? So I will say that value pricing is much more about implementing your pricing and comparing your units to each other, more so than your units to your neighbor's units, right? And so that's the core concept of value pricing is like, let's do an internal look and deep dive. That said, just from experience working with many operators across the country, yes, zip codes and regionality definitely play into your pricing strategy. Like if you're in Northwest Houston compared to Southwest Houston, you can sometimes see a 20-50% premium depending on where you're located. And I imagine same for St. Louis or Springfield or Branson. So zip codes very much so can help with your pricing strategy. But I'm not an expert on that, so just know that.
Brian, do you have anything you want to throw in on that about zip codes and how they affect pricing strategy?
Well, a lot of that depends on how saturated your market is. But I know that the value pricing and the optimizing has been around for a while. I think a lot of operators are scared to try it because they're worried about, we're going to have 3 different prices. How are we going to explain why we charge more on one, more of this, more of that? The airlines industry doesn't do it. The car rental industry doesn't do it. They just basically give you options and let you choose. We're getting ready to start the value pricing, and within the next 60 days, and we're just going to try one facility and see how that works. But if you have a facility, maybe you only try one building. Or just give it a shot and see if it works. While it does work for most, maybe it doesn't work for you. Maybe it doesn't work for everyone. But if you can increase your profit, even $300-400 a month, that's still something you didn't have before.
Right. Yeah. And considering that year over year, that's a lot of income.
Right.
I think we've got a couple more questions that came in. Okay, let's see here. One second. Okay. This came in from Darren Hasselhorst. How do you implement dynamic pricing in your software and website?
Okay, I'll only mention the software briefly because again, that's not my expert hat. We've got several storable peeps in the crowd, and so maybe Trace or somebody can chime in on the storable side. But I do know that if you want to go with a software solution, that Veritech, again, I kept mentioning Warren, Veritech does have a software integration with SiteLink. And some of the other storable products. So if you want a software-driven solution, they're out there, right? So talk to our friends at Veritech. Now that said, on the website, I've seen a few different ones out there. I hate to mention it, but StoragePug offers this capability on the website. But honestly, presenting your pricing in a very simplified way, it's the secret, right? What we do, there's no real secret sauce other than just make it easy, right? And so Darren, hopefully that helps. So there's website providers out there, and of course, Trace and his team at Storable can reach out to talk to you about how they would implement on the software front.
Yep, that's exactly right. I'd be more than happy to shed some light on the Veritech integrations to do exactly that.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Trace.
Thanks, Trace.
All right. So we've excuse me. So we've got a few minutes before we're going to start our vendor spotlight at 10 o'clock. Tommy, did you want? I don't have any more questions that have come in yet. If anybody wants to send those through chat right now, we can give it a couple minutes. Otherwise, I guess we can. Do you have any more information you want to share about that, or?
No, my challenge that I put on myself is, because you said it yesterday, that we haven't been on time.
Right.
Yeah, none of the virtual conferences have been on time. We're going to be on time this week. Yeah, gosh darn it. So, so wanted to give plenty of time for Q&A, but also, want to make sure that, we want to be mindful of everybody's time slots. And I think, especially with, Jeff Greenberger coming on, want to make sure that we give him plenty of time and action to share his wisdom with the crowd.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll just run back through kind of our schedule for today. If you are a member of the MSSOA, which most of the people joining today are. If you received this nice shiny flyer in the mail, it's got our schedule all day today and all day tomorrow. We don't have any breaks scheduled because we are working with our vendors and doing what we're calling vendor spotlight. The first one we have for today is going to be Trace with Storable. I'm not sure if Kara is joining him on that, but she is here to take any questions that come through. If you're just now joining us, it looks like we've added about 20 more people on our participant list. First of all, welcome. Thanks again to StoragePug and Tommy and his team for sponsoring this. We are so excited about our turnout. I want to reiterate again how important this is as far as our association goes. When we have a big turnout for events like this, it just speaks volumes to the people in our state legislature that are thinking that, it just shows them that we have a voice. And so we're glad that you guys are here. It's more important than just showing up for education and connection with other Missouri self-storage owners and operators and our vendor partners. So also, we wanted to give another shout out to the vendors for contributing the prizes for the vendor hall. When we wrap up today around 11:30, 11:40, we're going to open up that vendor hall. We've got 6 participants, and we're going to give away 5 very valuable prizes today and tomorrow. So we want to make sure that all you have to do is go to that vendor hall, click on a few of those links. Tommy is going to demo that a little bit later today so that you know exactly how to get over there and get in touch with our vendors. And again, thank you to everyone that is here. We are using this Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen to send in any question that you have for me, for the board, for any of our speakers, any of our panelists. This is an education-driven event, and we want to answer all of the questions that we can today. Also, use your chat function. It helps everybody stay engaged. Send some, smiley faces, send some waves, whatever you want to do. This is also, networking is a big piece of our association, and we want to make sure that you are connected. So it is, let's see, what time is it? 9:56, so we can go ahead and get started with our first vendor spotlight with Storable. That'll be Trace and Kara, and is Weston joining us for that too? We're happy to do that. But
we're all here, but it's Trace that's going to be our spokesperson.
Okay. Well, at 10:07, we'll hear from Lonnie with storageoptions.com, and then at 10:15, Jeff Greenberger will start his presentation on the 5 common questions for storage attorneys. So we are looking forward to that. All right, with that, I'll hand it over to Storable. How about it, you guys?
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak and putting this together today. So yeah, my name is Trace Weaver. I'm a sales rep on the Storable team. I'm joined with my colleagues Kara and Weston Cooper, who is part of the tenant insurance side of Storable. So for those that aren't familiar with Storable, I want to give an overview. So Storable was formed in 2018 when a private equity firm out of Boston saw a really big opportunity in the self-storage industry to build a company that is a one-stop shop. So someone who's new to the industry or been in the industry for years can come work with one company and build all their products from software to websites to payment processing and insurance. So doing that, the private equity firm went out and started acquiring some of the top technology companies in self-storage. So most folks in the industry are going to be a lot more familiar with the products that we have within Storable. Starting off with our software products, we have 2 options. SiteLink was the first acquisition that was done. For those that don't know, SiteLink was founded in 1996 and to date is the most widely used software option in the industry. What makes SiteLink really unique is the ability to tie in any third-party integration that fits your needs. SiteLink can take anything from kiosks to gates to call centers, auctions and lien services, and tie it all together to work efficiently on one platform. SiteLink is also going to have a really big emphasis on accounting and reporting. Our second product is StoreEdge. StoreEdge is a little bit newer software. For the better part of 13 years, StoreEdge has been an industry leader for building really robust technical websites for the storage industry. And about 6-7 years ago, StoreEdge decided to dip their toes into the management software side of the industry and built a really modern, all-in-one solution management software. So compared to SiteLink, you don't need to have necessarily all these third-party systems to get the same result. StoreEdge is typically what we offer to folks who are looking to be a little more hands-off day-to-day and have a lot of automated processes. Going on to our website product, as I mentioned, we have StoreEdge that builds the websites for Storable. These are really robust technical websites that are fully integrated into your management software that allows anything from online rentals to signing a lease and contract online, all the way to paying your bill online. Not to mention, we also manage the Google presence through a digital marketing services effort to make sure the website is relevant and ranks well in common Google searches. In addition, we have our marketplace, which is called Sparefoot. This is actually where I spent my time before the acquisition. Sparefoot is very compared to the hotels.com of the self-storage industry. It is an online marketplace that allows an owner to list their vacant inventory, and it casts that information to a really wide audience to allow a customer to comparison shop. So it's a really good way to fill your facility up at a more rapid rate, especially during lease up. Moving on, we have 3 payment processing companies that we have acquired. We have SiteLink Merchant Services, which is our preferred option for SiteLink users. We have Select Merchant Solutions, which is our preferred payment processor for StoreEdge users. And finally, SBOA Merchant Services. And then bringing it in at the home stretch is our tenant insurance program, where Weston Cooper can absolutely talk more through this, but we have StoreSmart and Bader tenant insurance. And for those that aren't familiar, tenant insurance is one of the easiest revenue streams you can have owning a storage facility. And it also reduces the risk and liability from an ownership standpoint by offering this tenant insurance. So the net of Storable is we have taken what all of these that once were standalone operations, we have integrated all these products and services together. So someone that's new to the industry or been in the industry for many years can come to Storable and get each piece of our business that makes the most sense for you to run as efficient as possible. So kind of some of the things that Tommy and Brian were hitting on today, things like online rentals. Storable has an online rental program through our websites that allows complete contactless move-ins with all your customers. They can find their unit, they can pay for the unit, sign their lease and contract, all online without having to interact with somebody, which, as you know, with the way that technology is evolving and everything that's going on with COVID-19, that is a very big selling point for self-storage to be able to offer some of these services. So yeah, come on by the booth. I'd love to share a little bit more about each product and see how we can help anybody out.
Thanks, Trace. Okay, let me see if we had any questions come in on that. Nothing on the open. Let's see if we got any chat. Okay, great. So that sounds good. I guess we can go ahead and get started with Lonnie and his vendor spotlight today. We are moving a lot faster than I anticipated. And welcome. Look who we have here, Mr. Jeff Greenberger. Good morning. He is gonna get started at about 10:15. Lonnie, do you think you have 12 minutes of material for us? Where's Lonnie? Where's Lonnie? Okay. Lonnie's not quite there. All right.
Hello, hello.
There you are. Okay, we can hear you. We can't see you. Not yet. There you are. There you are.
Okay.
All right. So Lonnie.
I was going to do the whole thing in an auctioneer chant, just $100 bid now too, talk fast. And I only had a few minutes, but now I can do my Louisiana drawl and give a little normal pace.
Yeah. Lonnie has spent the last month in Alaska, and doing, I guess, some hunting or some just
social distancing.
Okay, that's a great spot for that. Awesome. Okay, so Lonnie is here, like I mentioned earlier. On the schedule, you saw Pete Whittingslow's name, and he and his wife had a baby a little bit early on Friday. All is well, and I meant to pull up that picture, but I never loaded it onto my laptop, so see if I can get that a little bit later. So, oh, look at that. Lonnie already has one. So congratulations to them and the storage auctions team. All right, Lonnie, I'll hand it over to you. Go ahead and get started.
Okay, thanks, guys. Yeah, you were supposed to get Pete today, and he had a baby. I think the National Enquirer will cover that here soon. Little boy, I think he's going to be a baseball player. So he don't have a choice. And I think Pete's already tying his right hand to his belt loop, so he has to be a left-handed pitcher. But anyways, congratulations to Pete. Let me see here. So instead you got me. I think I've spoken 4 or 5 times up there in Missouri, and got to know a lot of the operators up there. I did a look around before we got ready for today. I was always curious exactly where this came from, the Show Me State. And it was a politician. And it said he comes from a state that raises corn, cotton, and kookaburras. And frothy eloquence neither convinces nor satisfies me. He wants to be shown. So one thing with online auctions, we have heard way more 4 or 5 years ago than we hear now. Well, I don't think it's going to work in my town. I don't think it'll work where my storage facilities is. I don't think my bidders are going to like this. So we just did a quick look at some of the units that are up right now for sale on our site, and some that we've sold recently, just to kind of show you that in St. Clair, this one, screenshot was taken yesterday. It was already 500 views. I don't know how big your parking lots are, but you probably can't get 500 cars in the parking lot, and you really don't want them pre or post COVID. So all over the state, you'll look at, we're showing you two numbers, and these units are actually live now, so those bids have probably gone up. There was 246 views, $350 in bids, and this is in Cape Girardeau. Another one in St. Clair. A lovely camper. I think that thing just jumped up to 310 a few minutes ago. I took a peek at it and probably topped out over 1,000 views so far, and we still got another day to go with this thing. So across the state, these are some past ones, auctions that happened earlier in last month. And I don't know where she's got this last one. Mountain Home, there you go. So across the state of Arkansas, Missouri, sorry. Sometimes I keep thinking Shelley's still just in Arkansas. We've been doing auctions up for about 4 or 5 years now across the state. I think Red Dot was one of our first big brands that kind of brought us kind of across the map over there. Got a lot of stores throughout the Midwest. The auction process is your process. It's just a contactless way of doing this, to borrow some of the catchphrases. The bidders, everything happens online. We have lots of bidders already, so you can thank the guys that went out before you and were the pioneers in this thing. And if you hadn't had a lien sale in the last few months, if you hadn't tried online auctions, if you do just Google storage space auctions near me, we tend to come up first nationwide. Call into our office. We have a trade show booth here. I think Alana Ross will be working that since Pete had a baby. Feel free to come by and visit the booth throughout the different times the next couple of days. One other thing I wanted to touch base on is a new thing that we just came out, the only company with this. We were asked time and time again, well, would we audit the auction? And for the guys that were using live auctioneers, the auctioneer would look and check up on your manager to make sure that they got the dates right. And tomorrow, during my presentation on how online auctions work, lien sales, and the timeline for the state of Missouri, we'll go over the details. Your state is one of the more confusing lien laws, but with the help of a couple of different attorneys and our team who's actually done this timeline evaluation for each and every state, we feel like we're going to be able to explain it in a really good way. But what our timeline guarantee does, and it's free to use, is when you're having an auction with us, it's going to audit from the date that tenant was late to the date you sent the first notice, the second notice, the newspaper ad, and the date your sale, and make sure they were spaced according to the timeline that your state statutes require in Missouri. And it's a software that does this auditing. It's not auctioneers that are sitting there using all their fingers and toes to get to the 45 days that you have to be late, the 10 days before that, the newspaper, and the 10 days before that. It's confusing, and there's plenty of room for human error. Software knows how to count pretty good. We did a lot of work. It took us about a year to get this thing ready to roll out nationwide, and we have tested it. We've already found for 3 different operators lien sales that were going to be outside of compliance. They were able to stop those sales and rerun the ads and get it straight to avoid any chance of ended up in a courtroom. None of us want to be there. I'm an owner of storage, been an owner for 23 years. I've had them catch on fire. I've had several hurricanes, including one of my places in Lake Charles that got hammered a few weeks ago. This thing will check the dates, and if you had a judgment against you and our system didn't catch that you were out of compliance based on the state statute of timeline, we'll guarantee up to a $5,000 protection that we'll insure you for if there's a judgment on you. And we're the only company out there to do it. It's software that's doing it. It's been tested. It's good. check us out, come by the booth, visit with Alana, be happy to explain how all of it works. And then tomorrow we're going to go into very specific details on how the Missouri lien law is interpreted and how you guys need to do it, best practices for getting your auctions done and getting the best return you possibly can. I'll yield my remaining time to the floor. Shelley, if you have any questions.
Yeah, well, I was just messaging everyone over chat to definitely tune in for that tomorrow at 10 a.m. That I didn't know about your timeline guarantee.
It's brand new. You're the first. You're
Yeah,
actually the first state to get to hear about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. When did you say that was going to be rolling out?
It's now. It's live now. We had planned on rolling it out at the spring SSA and then the fall SSA event. So since there's no shows, Missouri gets to be the first one to hear about it as a corporate announcement. So there you go.
Well, we are flattered, and we really appreciate the time that you guys spent on working through our somewhat confusing lien law. And I think anyone in our association, especially our board, would agree that it is not very clear on some occasions. And I know Jeff will probably answer some of the questions that will come in as far as that goes. But yeah, we appreciate you, and we are looking forward to that presentation tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lonnie. Okay. All right, Tommy, we want to get Jeff set up, maybe start a couple minutes early with him.
You're ready for me?
We're ready. Let's see where Tommy is. He should be working on getting ready for if you need to share your screen. So
I know how to do it.
Yeah. Jeff was at an eviction this morning, so we're excited to have him. I know his schedule was very tight today, so we are thankful that you're here with us, and we are looking forward to hearing about the 5 common questions for storage attorneys.
Okay. You don't want to hear about my fun eviction?
I do. I actually.
I don't blame you. It was gross. Even the magistrate didn't really want to hear about it too much, but he was like fascinated by it. He was like, really? So just so you know, I got to evict someone who on July 5th, so I guess it was her Independence Day, murdered her husband and then fled to Las Vegas. So kind of fun. That was interesting. So there's no graceful way to transition to share my screen and start the PowerPoint without doing it this way. So let's do it this way, and we will make the ugly transition here.
Well, it's good to know that you, I didn't know that you had, that you just didn't work on the storage side of the law and in commercial real estate. So you were all over the place. That's good to know.
They say I'm all over the place, but not, yeah, okay. Anyway, there's the ugly transition, but we got it.
Okay. All right, I'm throwing it over to you, and I will, you guys send in your questions in through the Q&A and the chat, and when Jeff wraps up here in about 45, 50 minutes, we will get these questions over to him and answer as many as we can.
Right. So my topic today is, what questions do you need to ask? And I put in parentheses the self-storage attorney, because one of the things I get all the time is, do I need you? Not me specifically, but do I need a self-storage attorney? And that answer sort of varies. And so I decided, well, let's talk about some of the questions you really need to ask, whether it's me or any of the people who actually practice in self-storage, as a concentration versus when do you just need an attorney who can help you. And it's going to surprise you. I'm actually going to turn you away from self-storage attorneys a little bit. But that's okay, because you don't always need, myself or Scott Zucker or Carlos or Stan Mathers or whoever you might, call in these instances. So there, I think I named them all. So what happens, when a tenant files bankruptcy? I put this at the top of the list for a lot of reasons. The number one reason is we're seeing a lot more tenant bankruptcies, obviously, I think for a lot of reasons. Number one, Lonnie's selling them off a lot faster these days. But number two, I think just with COVID and with people losing their jobs and just sort of the state of the economy in general, and that's not a political statement. That's just a lot of people are out of work and a lot of people are in bad shape. We're seeing a lot more bankruptcies. I think we're going to see a lot more bankruptcies in the future. And the problem with bankruptcy law is it is absolutely the most counterintuitive thing possible. If you think what you're doing is right because it would be right in your mind, it's exactly wrong in bankruptcy law. And so bankruptcy law is exactly the opposite of what you'd expect, unless you think of it as what would be the most unfair possible thing to you. That's what bankruptcy law would be. And the thing that I see when people call me about bankruptcy questions is I see a lot of emotion get in the way, right? You know, a lot of times, especially right now with COVID and people feeling like they've been sort of shut down on doing lien sales, or maybe they're not imposing their late fees. Maybe they've taken a break from doing lien sales for a period of time. Maybe you think you're not able to do lien sales for a period of time, etc. And you're like, well, this person's really taken me to the cleaners for 3, 4, 6, 9 months at a time. And right as I'm about to finally sell them, then they file bankruptcy on me. I'm not going to stand for that. I'm still going to sell them. And that's a huge problem, because a violation of a bankruptcy order, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, can result in a contempt of court holding. And that can result in penalties not only of money, but also jail time. I mean, it's like contempt of court of any other contempt of any other court. When a judge gets upset with you for violating that order, that could also be a jail time type penalty. And as COVID maybe hopefully tails off a little bit, judges will be less reticent to put you in jail. Right now, jails aren't real interested in taking anybody that they don't absolutely have to take, but bankruptcy judges are a different kind of judges. They're not Article 3 judges that get the lifetime appointments. They're the ones that have to be reappointed every, I think it's 13 years. They're Article 9 judges under the Constitution. So they even have less sense of humor than any other judge. So it's really important to call an attorney. I'm not always sure it's a self-storage attorney, but it's really important to call an attorney. When you call an attorney, I think the first questions I tend to ask is your tenant current with you right now? Did they owe you money on the date that they filed? Because a lot of people are really surprised to get a bankruptcy notice even though their tenant doesn't owe them anything. But that's really normal, because the way the bankruptcy petitions are structured, you may get pulled into a bankruptcy even if the tenant doesn't owe you anything, because there's a lot of questions on the petition about things like security deposit or unexpired leases. And if your tenant identifies you as holding an unexpired lease or a deposit or anything like that, you're going to get named. That's going to result in you getting a notice. That doesn't mean your tenant's trying to discharge anything. It just means you're aware that your tenant is in a bankruptcy. It may not affect you in any way, but you have to at least make a note of it. Bankruptcy is a very big snapshot in time type of law. And that term is pre and post petition. Everything is judged by the date that the bankruptcy is filed. That date and backwards is called pre-petition, and the day after they file and forward is called post-petition. And that's a real big term that you need to understand when you're dealing with bankruptcy, because everything pre-petition is what gets discharged or put into the plan and partially discharged. And everything after that is a whole different ball of wax. So what your attorney is going to ask you is sort of, were they delinquent to you at the time of filing, i.e. pre-petition, and have they paid you or not paid you post-petition? And then they're going to ask you what chapter they filed, if you know. The other question they're going to ask you is, or what you're going to need to know is, how do you know when an occupant filed bankruptcy? And that's the really, really tricky question. As a matter of fact, I got that question this morning, because a lot of tenants, you don't necessarily get that notice like you would ideally want to get. And this is one of those counterintuitive things that happen in a bankruptcy. You get, ideally you'd want to get a notice from an attorney or from a court saying your tenant filed bankruptcy, act accordingly. But one of the questions I got this morning from a lady said, the tenant basically screamed at me, "I'm filing bankruptcy, screw off." I cleaned up the language substantially. And they won't give them a case number. They won't tell them where they filed. And the lady basically said, do I have to deal with that? And the answer is yes. The bankruptcy law, being counterintuitive, has basically been interpreted that any reference to notice, scream, yell, bar stool notice, anything like that is good enough notice that it imposes upon you a duty to then react to it and disprove it before you proceed. So I know people who have basically said, I'm going to file bankruptcy before you sell me F you. And my clients have called me and said, do I have to put up with that? And the answer is, yep. Now it's up to you to disprove it before you do anything else. I'll talk about what anything else means in 1 second. So you may get a notice from a court, you may get a letter from an attorney, but you may also get a statement from the occupant, sometimes including explicatives. You may get word of mouth. You may get them screaming it from a car window. There may just be rumor or innuendo. Basically, I'm going to file before. I was in court this morning and a tenant basically said, I'm going to file before you can take judgment against me. That's good enough. Now it's on you. And the law is very lenient on debtors. Basically, all they have to do is say it. You can get a 3 a.m. drunken message from a blocked number saying, I'm going to file before you can do this. That's good enough. All burden then falls to you to disprove it. And by the way, even lying in court might be good enough to protect the debtor. So I've seen them come into court and say, I told you I was going to do it. And they may have never done it, but if they even lie about it, that may be good enough. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that imposes upon you an interesting duty. One of those duties that I say you have before you sell people is you may want to check this database. It's the federal government's database called PACER before you sell anyone, just to make sure you can disprove that they have not filed bankruptcy. That may have been a double negative, I'm sorry. But we recommend all of our clients check PACER before they sell, just to make sure, because it's easier to spend 10 seconds. Many of you don't sell that many people each month. It may make sense to log into PACER and check, just to give yourself that little extra help of sleep at night that you didn't sell someone, because a tenant can come into court and say, I yelled it at him, I told him so, he ignored me, he sold me, and then you're in the soup. The first thing you really need to know about bankruptcy is this automatic stay concept. It's what it sounds like. It's automatic, and it's a stay against all creditors, not just you, about doing anything to collect a debt. Okay? So what does that mean? As soon as a bankruptcy hits the electronic or real stamper in court, it's in place. It doesn't matter if this is their 5th filing in a year. It doesn't matter whether it's a bad faith filing. Unless the debtor's been ordered not to file again, as soon as it hits the stamper, it's automatic and it goes into effect. The judge doesn't sign it, a judge doesn't see it, it's automatic. And it says you can't do anything to take any action to collect a debt once it's filed, until you get special approval to stop it. Okay? This includes commencement or continuation of any proceeding to collect this debt. Let me just mention some of those things that are prohibited. Sending any bills. Again, this is on the pre-petition debt, right? Late notices, automatic texts, imposition of additional fees, lien notices, lien sales, proceedings with evictions. Let me hit me right in the heart. Many of you know I have a company called Late to Lien that sends automatic late and lien notices. As soon as a bankruptcy is filed, we have to stop everything that we're doing to proceed towards a lien sale. If you don't use my service, you have to stop everything that would be a proceeding towards a lien sale. You have to stop any automatic texts, any auto calls, robocalls. You can't impose any new fees related to the charges. If you've got your thing up on Lonnie's site, down it goes immediately, right? If you're going to sell tomorrow, down goes the sale. You can't sell. You can't let a motion get in the way. If your manager's making late calls, they stop. Everything towards the sale, anything that would be perceived as trying to collect or enforce collection of that debt, or enforce collection or foreclosure of that debt or that lien, stops on a dime. Any action to collect that debt stops. Any violation is a violation of a judge's order saying stop it. And those all go towards that potential violation of that judge's order that could result in contempt of court. Okay? And I know you're all sitting there saying, and I'm not looking at the question log, but people are saying, well, what if I don't know? Well, again, you may not know immediately, but as soon as someone says something, that shifts the burden to you to start checking. And that's the problem. That's why you have to start checking, right? As soon as some tenant yells at you, I'm going to file, that means you need to start looking and checking, right? Not just the day before sale. But if a tenant says, I'm going to file before you sell me, then you're on watch, right? And again, I'm not taking anything away from Lonnie's nifty service, but that's not what Lonnie's checking for you. He's checking timelines. This is why you call an attorney, because Lonnie's service isn't checking it. And no other service per se is checking it, right? These are calls to an attorney, because this is what keeps you out of jail, right? And again, if you're not on notice, it's one thing. Once you're on notice, once someone leaves you that drunken message, you proceed like you're walking through a minefield, because that's what bankruptcy is. It's awful. Now, let me just take a quick minute and tell you about a couple things about bankruptcy. There are three common types of bankruptcy, 7, 13, and 11. I'm going to breeze through these. There are three. The chapter 7 is where they attempt to discharge all unsecured debt or secured debt. That's where collateral's pledged, like a mortgage or a car loan. This is the one that was supposed to stop with bankruptcy reform. That was, I don't know, 15 years ago. Generally, this is the one where you get no money. This is the one where they walk away. This is also the one where you can't generally negotiate with the debtor to get them out once they file a Chapter 7, because while the bankruptcy is in motion, all the property belongs to their bankruptcy trustee. This is why you call a bankruptcy attorney to help you, because the bankruptcy attorney needs to negotiate with the bankruptcy trustee to get the tenant out of your unit. You can't just say, hey, come get your stuff and get out, because at that moment, that property no longer belongs to the debtor. If you negotiate with the debtor and they get their stuff out, you may find a very angry bankruptcy trustee, because the bankruptcy trustee may say, I was interested in selling the contents of that unit to raise money for the creditors, like you, but like other creditors, you had no right to do that. That was my property. That was my Harley Davidson in that unit. You can't sell that. So do not think you can self-medicate in this one. That would be a very, very big mistake. This is why you call the attorney, okay? There is a Chapter 13. This is called a wage earner plan. In theory, this repays some or all of the debt owed, the pre-petition debt, over a 3 to 5 year period. These are the ones that get filed regularly. Chapter 7s can only be filed once every 7 years. Chapter 13s, people can come and go out of these plans all the time. They come in, they stop your sale, maybe they pay the plan for a month or two, or maybe a year, they dismiss out, you refile, you get your sale re-teed up, they file a new Chapter 13. They play this game maybe 3-5 times before the court says you can't file again. This is the one where you're going to get a proof of claim. This would be the only way you get any money out of a Chapter 13. Do not presume that
conference so far.
I'm sorry, someone. Okay,
The
someone may need to mute.
by Jeff Greenberger,
Larry.
his whole things on bankruptcy. I think we're in the spot.
1 second. Sorry, guys. Tommy, can you mute the other panelists, please?
I think I'm back, so I'm going to keep talking. If I've done something wrong, Shelley, yell at me.
You're good. Sorry about that.
No problem. All right. If you miss filing a proof of claim, your debtor will discharge all your debt and you will get no money. Again, a real good reason to work with your attorney to get that thing filed. Now, this is one where you might be able to negotiate with your tenant to get them out. But I would still, at least the first couple times you see a 13, work with a bankruptcy attorney to learn how to do this, and then you can sort of wash, rinse, repeat that plan if it works for you. Again, please notice I'm not saying a self-storage attorney, at least not yet. This is your local experienced creditor bankruptcy attorney. You don't need me to do this. You need a local creditor attorney that knows bankruptcy. I'm happy to help you, but you don't need me. You can use any good attorney in Missouri that knows anything about bankruptcy. Happy to hold your hand, don't need me. Okay? And then there's chapter 11. All right, let's see what's going wrong here. Why can't advance? There we go. All right, these are really big bankruptcies, like for American Airlines or Macy's or something like that. These are going to be very expensive. You're not going to see your general regular tenants filing these. However, we do see these occasionally of our tenants where you have like a big national tenant, like a restaurant chain or a fitness chain that rents units. I had one recently where a janitorial company rented units all over the country. And I had like 15 clients all over the country calling me almost simultaneously because they got bankruptcy notices from the same janitorial company that had units at all my clients. If you get that, yeah, call me. I'll get you in touch with one attorney who's handling all of them across the country, and you can all sort of jointly pay one creditor attorney to handle it for you in the state where the bankruptcy is filed to save you money. Okay, you're going to see that once every blue moon. All right. Now, the other thing you need to understand is if a tenant stays with you post-petition, they are obligated to pay their rent post-petition, not pre-petition. But from the day they file afterwards, they either need to pay their rent or they need to reject the lease with you and move out. Now they get 60-ish days to reject the lease. So for 60 days, we do either need to sort of ask questions and negotiate, or you're going to get a lease rejection. So those are 60 days where we do kind of sit on our hands. Maybe we're going to talk to the debtors, your local attorney is going to talk to the debtor's attorney and sort of see what's happening. But if they don't pay rent for about 60 days, we're either going to negotiate a deal to get them out, or we're going to ask for something called relief from the automatic stay. That should be my next, well, I got one more slide, and then we're going to talk relief from, well, maybe one or two more slides, and we're going to talk about relief from the automatic stay. But remember, one thing that I see, I just, one of my clients just signed on for late to lien, and as we take them on, I saw 4 units that were 900 days behind. 900, more than 3 years, almost more than 3 years. Why? Well, these 4 tenants filed bankruptcy. We didn't think we could do anything. That is 100% wrong. After 60 days, you have a remedy. Okay? You have a right, you have a remedy. Don't think you have to sit on your hands for forever, but you do have to either negotiate or sit on your hands for about 60 days after bankruptcy. I do just want to point out some mistakes that you can make that really can get you in trouble. One is any attempt, including auctioning, late notices, lien notices, adding fees, anything like that we talked about a few minutes ago, trying to collect any pre-petition debt. That is forbidden. Okay? That's what's trying to be discharged. These debtors are in safe harbor sort of in the safe skirt of a bankruptcy court. Incorrectly submitting your proof of claim is a big mistake. Any other thing that would violate the automatic stay, like discussing with your tenant pre-petition debt, anything like that. And let me tell you the other one, and you're going to hate this one. And this is what makes bankruptcy so counterintuitive. If you receive more than $600 by hook, crook, or even voluntarily within 90 days of filing, even if it's for rent, more than $600, like $600.01, the trustee is going to come to you and say that was a preferential payment. And you have to pay every red cent of it, not the 1 penny, all $601. Or if you receive $900 within 90 days of filing of the bankruptcy, you have to pay all of it back. And if you refuse to, the trustee in bankruptcy will file a contempt motion against you. And then you will pay all of it back plus contempt and attorney's fees to the trustee and contempt. So if you hear from a trustee saying, I want this money back, definitely call your bankruptcy or your local attorney, because you need to have that conversation. I got a call about that yesterday from a client who didn't do it, and we're writing a check today before they file that adversary action, because it just gets exponentially more expensive immediately. So do not say, I earned that money, that was my rent money, I'm not giving that back because that's salt in my wound. That's the way the bankruptcy code's written. I'm sorry, I didn't write the bankruptcy code. If you have problems with that, I don't know what to tell you. You may want to speak to Elizabeth Warren about that, because she was instrumental.
Oh, this is Mo Kruger. How can I help you?
I don't know how many
Hello?
years ago, but preferential payments absolutely stink because they're 100% counterintuitive. But do not accidentally screw up and say, well, that's my money, I earned it, I'm not giving it back, because the damages will become exponential. And you'll get to meet a bankruptcy judge, and that's never any fun. I will tell you, as an attorney, I've represented a lot of clients in a lot of hair-raising situations. But the only time I've ever represented clients where I've had to tell my clients, the judge has said, you know, we're going to court tomorrow and bring a toothbrush with you because you may end up in cuffs and taken to jail, are violations of automatic stay orders. And I mean, I've had clients literally break into tears when I've had to tell them that. Like, Jeff, I never meant to do that, right? You know, I'm just trying to earn a living here. You know, I don't understand why. I'm just an American trying to earn a living, and this law sucks. And I'm like, look, I'm just relaying what the judge said. I told you not to do it. You did it anyway, and you may end up in cuffs going into jail tomorrow. And I was told to tell you to bring a toothbrush. And if that doesn't scare you straight enough, I don't know what does. I've never, ever in any other area of the law had to tell my client to bring a toothbrush to court. And I hope that scares you enough to realize the seriousness of how these judges treat this stuff. Okay. As controversial as this sounds, there is one thing that you can do in advance to make a tenant bankruptcy filing go smoother, right? If a tenant says to you, I'm going to file bankruptcy before you sell my stuff, and you sell their stuff and they have filed a bankruptcy before you sell, or you continue to send late notices and so forth, you strongly risk that contempt of court for violation of an automatic stay. There's one thing you can do. You can check Pacer, which is a database. And if you don't get access to Pacer, they've sort of tightened it up how you get access to Pacer. PACER is an acronym. I can never remember what it stands for. Your local attorney can always get access to PACER. And I will tell you, we have it here and we'll do it for you if your local attorney won't. I have paralegals that have it up on their desktop all day long. We check it. We're about to add that to Late to Lien as one of the features where you can just push a button and check PACER. Okay? But there's one hitch to checking PACER. And none of you like it. And any of you who attended last year's meeting in Missouri and heard me speak, you know what I'm about to say. And it's a drum I beat every year. But here we go. I've said it before. If you call me, I'm going to say it again. To be absolutely certain when you check PACER to stay out of jail, to avoid taking a toothbrush to court with you someday, when you lease to people, you need to obtain their social security number. Okay? We can have all the military check discussions you want. This is my checkmate. This is why you need it. This is why you're going to need it more in the next few years, because bankruptcy filings are going to go up and up. Okay? You just put it in your management software. It gets encrypted. You never need to know it. Your managers never need to see it. Your assistant managers never need to see it. It doesn't need to get printed. But when you need to check it, when someone says, I am filing bankruptcy, and you need to run it through PACER, you need to have it. And this is just a picture of one of my clients called Citadel Self-Storage. They've got a couple locations around the country. And this is exactly what Stephanie Tharp does. And Stephanie is a big fan of Late to Lien, and she's a big fan of Lonnie, right? And she uses Late to Lien, and she uses Lonnie, and she uses us as counter checks to each other, right? We guarantee that we don't screw up her lien notices, and then Lonnie runs the same timeline check, and she gets double guarantees that nothing goes wrong, right? But we check PACER for her before she goes to sale, right? But this is what Citadel does, and this is exactly the same thing Stephanie has on every desk at every one of her A+ facilities. It's just a little digits only keypad, and they're under $20 on whatever site you like to buy your office supplies from. Staples, Office Max, Office Depot, Amazon. And all you do is say, it's time to put your social security number in. If you're doing it online, if they don't put it in, you just get the red X of death. Okay? And it's in your site link, or it's in your storage, or it's in your whatever brand of software you like. U-Haul, or I don't know what to call it anymore. It used to be called Emu. It's in whatever software you use, right? And it's there. And when you need to check it, it goes through PACER, and the day before you sell, or on the day they tell you that they're filing bankruptcy, you check, and that way you don't violate. Now, on the day before you sell, you check again, and you make sure you don't violate. And all this stuff is a good warning, but it's all for naught, because you'll check, and you know you're not violating any automatic stay order, and then you don't have to buy extra Oral-B toothbrushes during a pandemic, and then you don't go to jail. All right, the last thing I want to tell you, we've already told you how all this other stuff works. The last thing I want to tell you about before we move on to the next call the attorney topic is relief from stay. You don't, if your tenant does file bankruptcy, you don't have to sit on your hands for 900 days. If about 60 days after they file, nothing's moving, you have the right to file under 11 U.S.C. 362 for relief from stay. Now, your attorney is going to do this. This is never something you do yourself. You file a petition in bankruptcy court saying, Judge, the debtor hasn't paid me post-petition. I'm not adequately secured, meaning you're not holding a gigantic security deposit, and this self-storage unit isn't necessary for the reorganization. Those are the only 3 allegations you need to make. It goes into court. It generally takes 21 days, and the judge signs it. Now, this is the only time you may want a self-storage attorney to help your local attorney. because you have to be careful what you ask for because you get it automatically, right? You want to make sure you ask for the right relief, because if you don't ask for the right relief, which is either to sell or auction or evict or whatever it is you want, you may not end up with the right automatic relief. So your local attorney may want to talk to a self-storage attorney about what the various reliefs are you want. That would be a 10-minute conversation. Once you file it, there may or may not be a hearing, but the judge basically has to grant it because, again, no offense to any of you, but a self-storage unit is ubiquitous, right? It doesn't matter whether this debtor's in your unit or down the street at another unit. No offense. Self-storage, there's nothing so unique about your self-storage that the debtor can't move down the street into another one if they don't want to pay you. You get it, you get the debtor out, and you're done with this debtor. Now, you may have lost some money, but at least you cut your losses. But you certainly don't sit and let them stay another 365 days. Okay? But you call an attorney, and you call the self-storage attorney on the relief from stay part, or you at least have your local attorney call the self-storage attorney. Let's move on. You call a self-storage attorney for an update to your rental agreement. And by the way, I think while things are a little crazy right now, this is a great time to audit your self-storage rental agreements. And I know Lonnie and I've talked about this. It drives both of us a little crazy when we pull out rental agreements and we find that the rental agreement isn't signed, because that means you really can't do a sale because you can't send the notice to the last known address as defined under the Missouri statute, right? That makes it sort of a defective sale. Not sort of, it makes it a defective sale if you don't have a signed rental agreement. So here are some things. The state statute was updated a couple years ago. If you haven't updated your rental agreement since then, you probably aren't going to have a valid rental agreement. If you have no idea where the language of your rental agreement came from, people accuse me, and Lonnie always says he can give my own speech because he's heard it so many times. He knows my Jeffisms. He doesn't know my whole speech, but he knows my Jeffisms. And one of those Jeffisms is, if you borrowed your rental agreement from other facilities, and excuse me for being vulgar, it's sort of like having unprotected sex. You have no idea where it's been or where you got it from and what you're getting. You know, you got these $1 million buildings and you won't spend a couple $1,000s on a rental agreement. I think that's a bad bet, right? If your rental agreement is one page, it does not have enough protection for you. If it was written by an employee who hasn't worked for you in 5 or more years, bad idea. If it still has spots that say the year is 19 blank, it's probably a pretty good indication. You know, farmers use the winter to refresh their equipment, to sharpen their blades, to tune up their equipment. You know, we're coming up on the slow rental season. This is a really good opportunity to pull out your rental agreements. If you've got rental agreements that have 4 units rented on one rental agreement, that's bad. If you've got out-of-date rental agreements, if you haven't updated your rental agreement in the last couple years, you know, you've got a confusing enough statute. You've got $1 million business. It's time to update your rental agreement. I promise you, if you need a whole new one, even if you need an indoor and outdoor one, the whole project in our office, a whole new rental agreement, just indoor, won't cost you more than $2,000. A whole refreshed entire thing won't cost you more than $4,000. I mean, it's silly to have $1 million business and the one thing that's going to prevent lawsuits isn't going to cost you $4,000. We invite you to send us your rental agreement. We'll review it for free and tell you what we think. That doesn't even mean you have to use us to do it, but send us your rental agreement. It takes a couple weeks. We'll review it. We'll tell you what we think. If you don't need anything, it doesn't cost you a dime. If you need something, use whatever attorney you want, whatever self-storage attorney you want. At least you know. But this is a good time. You know, things are about to slow down a little bit. Invest in it. Like I said, it's silly to allow yourself to be exposed. I mean, the last 5 rental agreements I reviewed, 4 of them didn't even have value limits in them, meaning you've exposed yourself to a tenant lawsuit for undetermined amount of money. That's crazy. Some of them don't have arbitration clauses, meaning you've exposed yourself to class action lawsuits. These are silly things in this day and age to expose yourself to. Let me look at them for you. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm not calling you crazy. I'm just saying, you know, you've been busy. There's been a lot of reasons not to think about it this year. Open your drawer up, pull 5 out, 10 out, audit them. If you find mistakes, let me look. Like I said, it's not going to cost you anything to let me tell you. So feel free. We'll put our contact information up at the end. Use a self-storage attorney for a vehicle storage agreement. I've said it. I said it last year. A vehicle business, outdoor vehicle business particularly, is a completely different business, right? It is a bailment business. And if you're using a regular self-storage agreement for that, please let me explain to you. It's different. You cannot overlock an outdoor vehicle. You have a completely different insurance requirement, right? You may not be concerned or care, I think you should be, but you may not care to require insurance on an indoor storage unit, on mattresses and box springs and Christmas decorations and clothes. You better darn well care that that outdoor vehicle, that $350,000 mobile home, you better care that that's insured, right? So you better care that you know about the ownership of that vehicle, because if the tenant renting from you isn't the owner, that's a huge deal, right? Because you may not have privity of contract to enforce the value limit. Like I said, you better care about insurance. You better know who the lien holders are. And you have special rules being outdoors, right? You want to know if it's gone from the property. What happens if they park over the line or park in the wrong space and block somebody else from storing? It's just a whole different business. And you need to do a lot more to reduce your bailment liability, right? Because if you don't, someone's going to say you had a duty to notice that thing was missing, right? You had a duty to tell me that my vehicle was leaking or that my vehicle was stolen or had suffered damage. Alona from Lonnie's business and I were talking yesterday. She said, you know what my favorite Jeff story is? The one with the birds picking on the rubber and plastic stuff, which is a great story because I had a client call me one time and he said, I'm sitting out here watching birds, hawks or some other, bird of prey, and they're picking on all the rubber stuff, destroying these mobile or recreational vehicles. I'm like, Steve, you have a duty to stop that from happening. He said, no, I don't. They're wild animals. But you do. It's a bailment business. You have a duty to protect those vehicles, right? So it's a totally different business, and you have to think about it. You probably want to talk to a self-storage attorney about abandonment, right? If you're going to declare self-storage units abandoned, you really want to think about that in your storage agreement, right? The Missouri statute really doesn't discuss much and certainly doesn't define what an abandoned unit is. If you're going to declare units abandoned, and I'm talking now about indoor units, you want to put a definition in to protect you, right? So it's contractual. Think about that definition, right? It means to leave or cease to operate or inhabit or to give up the claim or right to. That's an intent level. How are you going to prove that intent, right? The number one insurance claim in California a couple years ago was people moving into storage units that had, a no money or a dollar moves you in. People were intentionally putting junk or empty boxes or rags in, and then intentionally not paying rent, waiting to see what the storage owner would do, right? So the storage owner would overlock the unit, then cut the lock. They'd say, it's garbage, and throw it out. And then the tenant would show up, say, I'm here to pay my rent. Thank goodness I saved, grandma's wedding dress and everything. And the owner would say, it was junk, I threw it out. What? And then they would make an insurance claim saying you threw my stuff out instead of selling it. So if you're going to claim abandonment, you better have a definition in your rental agreement that makes it contractual abandonment rather than proving intent, because when that tenant shows up, that disproves that they abandoned it, right? and they were setting you up for failure. And it's a pretty obvious business we run, right? Green locks are empty, red locks are overlocked. So the tenant could ride in with a buddy if they were setting you up, see that you'd put a new green lock on or their lock was off, and that's the next day when they show up ready to pay. That was a big insurance claim for a long time. You don't want to get set up that way. So make sure before you gleefully declare abandonment, you got it in your lease. And I always say, it's actually always better to sell. You're always on the safe side of the law when you sell. But I understand if someone moves out and leaves you a couple broken picture frames and some crumpled up Burger King wrappers, it makes sense to declare an abandonment. I actually had a client who got sued over throwing out someone's prized collection of Burger King wrappers. It was apparently a collection from 1960 something forward of every Burger King Whopper wrapper that was ever issued. The only reason we won that case is because apparently he was the only collector of Burger King Whopper wrappers that we could find. So while it was a prized collection, it was a collection of value only to one person. I guess if there had been other people that collected Burger King Whopper wrappers, we would have had some real exposure. So, think about it. Don't declare units abandoned with glee, but also contact your self-storage attorney to put that in. Put it in your rental agreement if you're going to declare units abandoned. Don't just say, oh, it's abandoned and do it. Make sure you've really thought through that and maybe think through that with your self-storage attorney. Do you need a self-storage attorney to purchase a facility? I think that answer is maybe. We generally recommend that you use a local attorney because that local attorney understands the customs of your local market. For example, a commercial real estate attorney will understand the specialty clauses that are local to your area. For example, closing costs are allocated out differently in Ohio than they are in Missouri. Here, the seller generally pays certain closing costs that may not be closing costs paid in your locality. And so generally we don't like to get involved in that. But there are definitely conditions or clauses that we like to put in that are specific to a self-storage purchase that your local attorney may not know. So what we say is use a local attorney and then have them involve a self-storage attorney for a little bit of consultation about how you handle mystery meat units, right? For example, one of the clauses we like to put in is we like to allocate a little bit of the purchase price towards having the owner consult with you after the purchase. Maybe allocate 10, 15 hours towards consultation so that if you open up a unit and you have no idea what you're looking at, that would force the seller to still consult with you and say, why are we looking at a unit filled with 50 vacuum cleaners? And that would, basically force them to consult with you and explain that unit to you. So there's a little bit of self-storage stuff that we'd like to have in there without, having us or any self-storage attorney have to know all the local customs and, again, attending the closing and so forth would be cost prohibitive. So we say use your local attorney and then just pay your self-storage attorney to consult for maybe an hour on a couple self-storage, specific clauses. So work with your local real estate attorney on that and maybe have us or have your self-storage attorney consult, a little bit. What about if you're the seller? I don't think there's any reason to have a self-storage expert involved with that. Your local counsel should be able to advise you on everything you need to successfully sell your attorney. You do need an accountant or an attorney to sell. You should never sell alone because there's a lot of tax implications involved, including the allocation of goodwill. Occasionally, I have had self-storage accountants or self-storage brokers call me and say, can we consult with you on the allocation of goodwill? I'm always happy to do that, I don't think I have all the answers, but if someone wants me to be involved for an hour, I'll be happy to do that. But generally, you don't need that. And what about zoning? You know, if you're going to build or form a partnership, absolutely not. You don't need a self-storage attorney on that. You absolutely need someone local who knows how the wheels are greased, who you need to win over. We would never in a million years suggest that we have any expertise on getting a local project off the ground. As a matter of fact, I think more often than not, especially with fire code issues and so forth, the people who are the attorneys at the National Self-Storage Association are your better bet. Joe Doherty and his crew up there have been wonderful to work with, and you should, never hesitate, because you're a member of your Missouri Self-Storage Association. That gives you access to those wonderful treasures at the National, and Shelley can always help you get in touch with those wonderful attorneys up there if you need help with a fire code issue or something like that. And those guys, gentlemen up there, have been absolutely amazing and wonderful resources in those cases. All right, 2 minutes for a commercial, Shelley. I'm about to turn it over to you for questions in case you need 2 minutes warning. We get to do a quick commercial for Late to Lien. I've referred to it already. Want to just remind you, one of the things that I own is Late to Lien. And maybe our new commercial ought to be, if you don't want to go to the Germany post office, we have that solution. But I do want to remind you, Late to Lien is a wonderful resource all times, but especially in COVID. If you are feeling uncomfortable understanding the requirements of a lien sale during, especially with the complications of your statute, Late to Lien is a wonderful resource. Late to Lien essentially does the legal requirements of late noticing and lien noticing. And by the way, does not in any way compete with what Lonnie does. Lonnie and I are wonderful co-resources to you at all times. We never step on each other's toes, right? Late to Lien taps into your management software with your permission and does several things. One, it does a military check for you and a postal address scrub, and lets you know if your tenant with a social security number is active duty. It will add, never take away, any better addresses it finds. It then, by verified first class mail and email, will notify your tenant by, like I said, email and verified first class mail. It will send out the late notice, the lien notice, as prescribed by statute, with the right words, by the right methods, by the right timing of the impending lien note of the lien sale or of the foreclosure. If you want, it will then do the required advertisements, and then it turns it back over to you or to Lonnie to sell. Lonnie then basically gets access because we turn over all the data to him. He can run it through his legal timelining. He can always tell me we've done something wrong. Of course, we agree to indemnify you as well. We expect Lonnie will never find anything wrong, but if he does, I guess we have egg on our face, but we will indemnify you if you're ever sued. We actually come to court and defend that case if you're ever sued, because anything we do is wrong. But that indemnification is a little bit bigger than the $5,000 guarantee. But Lonnie would also, I guess, if he missed something, back you up. But that becomes the double whammy guarantee that nothing will ever get you sued. And if it does, we will defend that lawsuit. We have $3 million worth of insurance through Lloyd's of London to guarantee that if anything we do is wrong, origami, goodbye, that basically make sure that you always are protected against any lawsuit from a tenant, that any noticing or advertising that we do would be wrong, So it basically protects you and makes sure that nothing would ever go wrong. And if it does, we would show up and put that multi-million-dollar insurance policy into play to make sure that you are protected. So what we make sure is that your manager basically gets to focus on doing what they do best, which is customer service, customer relations, working out problems, not doing late noticing, lean noticing, and fighting over it. We basically become the front face on that sort of stuff rather than your manager. All the notices come out from a processing center rather than your manager's name on it. Of course, we don't collect payments. So we basically take over all the legal compliance part. Just so you know, it's a very cost-effective solution. All you pay for are the tenants that go into default. There's no monthly, no minimums, no annual subscriptions. You only pay for the people we take over. You set the number of days late, so it's not like low-hanging fruit. We'll be happy to discuss the pricing with you if you're interested, but it's very, very cost-effective, and we recommend you put that charge right back in your rental agreement so it never actually ends up costing you money. We're happy to discuss that. Hi, Brian. And I didn't even know you were on the call. You're one of those buddies that we love to see on these calls. Good to see your smiling face. Okay, let me put up the question screen. In 1 minute, I'm going to switch from that question screen so you have some contact information for me in case you don't get to ask a question, or in case you want to send your lease in, or in case you want to ask about late to lien. You can always call me, and then we'll turn you over to happy smiling face to answer those kind of questions as well. Did I do all right, Shelly, on timing? I don't even know.
You did a pretty awesome job. I want to stand in for Shelly for just a moment. Jeff, way to go, sir. How you doing?
Good to see your smiling face, Tommy, too.
You know it, man.
Pandemic, I don't get to go out and actually see people. I miss seeing everybody.
I know you and I were, the last trade show I was at was the one you were at up in Pennsylvania. That was the last time I saw a smiling face.
That was the last good presentation I ever did.
Right. Hey, so timing is good. Mo, you're up next. Mo, we had you slated for 11:10. We're gonna bump you up to 11:15 so we can have a few minutes of extra Q&A. So Mo, just heads up, be ready to go. But Jeff, you've got tons of questions. I'm gonna fire these off as they come through. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, and anyone who doesn't get to get their question answered, feel free to email me at the info@selfstoragelegal.com. Send your lease to the same place. I'm sorry. We wanted to give you a full presentation.
You the man. All right. So question from Eileen. You mentioned earlier about Pacer. And I think you answered it during the presentation, but can you clarify again? Can anyone log into Pacer? Or is this something that only attorneys have secret access to?
It's a subscription service. So you have to sign up and pay for it. My understanding is they have recently started restricting it to attorneys. My client who asked this question this morning said it's a 7 to 10 day waiting period to get a subscription. So I don't know what the restrictions are on getting a subscription right now. They may have opened it back up. I'm not really aware of what the restrictions are. You can certainly try to sign up. If you can't and you need one or two, it costs us like 10 cents an inquiry. So if you need one or two quickly, you can always email me. We're not going to charge you for a quick Pacer till you can get a subscription.
There you go, Eileen. Thank you, Jeff. All right, Ruth Daniels. So what if the eviction process is due to an agreement breach that is not related to debt or money? Say a violation of what contents are stored in the unit. Does bankruptcy put a hold on that too?
Bankruptcy puts a hold on everything.
Boom. Easy. All right. Thank you, Ruth. Kim, good question here. So this is right around when you were discussing bankruptcy. But so let's say there was no response from the tenant and there's no move out. What can you actually do? What can items be discarded or donated?
No response and a bankruptcy?
Mm-hmm.
Bankruptcy puts a hold on everything. As soon as the stay order is in effect, which is when a bankruptcy is filed, you can't do anything until you get an agreement with the tenant or the trustee. And like I said, you should be working with a local attorney because as I said, emotion gets in the way. This law is as counterintuitive as Alice in Wonderland. So, it's really hard because the facts are so specific. Please don't take this as, Jeff said I could do something. You really need to call a local bankruptcy attorney, have them on your side. You'll see how whack it is.
Well, there you go. Awesome. So we still got a few minutes here. Jason, actually, this is a good question or some potentially suggestion. I know the answer might be bankruptcy puts a hold on everything, but let's say they do that. Wouldn't it be easier to just ask the customer to sign an abandonment form to release them from the unit and debts to us?
Well, in a Chapter 7, that's not possible at all because the property belongs to the trustee until the trustee abandons the property. And again, I would recommend you use a local attorney because this is very, very fact specific. And until you even know what kind of bankruptcy is filed, you don't want to play the home version of this game. In a Chapter 13, that's more possible. But again, you need to work with the tenant's bankruptcy attorney, and there's a landmine there. Because if you step on the landmine of even mentioning pre-petition debt, the Chapter 13 attorney representing the debtor may say, "Ha, I caught you. You violated. Gotcha." So,
well, there we go. All right.
Always
so Jeff,
better to have your attorney talk to their attorney. I know no one likes to spend money on attorneys. Listen, I'm an attorney and I know you guys and you don't like talking to me, and it's not going to be me in this case, but you just it's like tiptoeing through a minefield. So yes, the answer is maybe if it's a Chapter 13, but I would still use your attorney to talk to their attorney because it's a minefield and it's too easy to violate and you can get tripped up. And if you're dealing, excuse me for using this word, but if you're dealing with a jerk attorney on the other side, they may try to trip you up just to make some attorney fees.
okay. Well, there we go. So we've got time for one more question. And there are plenty of others. So all of y'all really email Jeff over at info@selfstoragelegal.com. I know his team is pretty quick on getting responses. And also, like he mentioned, send in your lease if you just need a lease reviewed. But last question here. I think this is pretty top of mind for a lot of folks. Catherine Brewer, thank you. So when the pandemic started, there was a lot of recommendations to pause the defaults and auction process. Has those recommendations been paused as of late?
Right. So, this is a really tricky question, and so I would still recommend, you double check with your own attorney. But the way we interpret Missouri is that what was put on in Missouri was a stay on evictions. Okay. We treat lien sales not to be evictions. Now, if you want to go to court and you want to file an eviction, you need to talk to your own local attorney for two reasons. One, there's been this whole new CDC moratorium on evictions altogether, which could complicate things separately. But our clients, our self-storage clients in Missouri have resumed lien sales. You don't know anything differently, correct?
Okay, I'm back.
Right.
Maybe. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Shelly, welcome back.
As far as you know,
Right.
your members have resumed lien sales.
Yes.
Right. So, this is advice from an out-of-state unlicensed in Missouri attorney, but we are seeing our late to lien clients resuming lien sales. Now, there's a whole separate question on late fees and other charges that I really would prefer not to answer.
Can you guys hear me?
Today. Yes, we can hear you.
You can?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
You can hear us. But
Sorry, guys. I had to completely change computers. My laptop just went black. Okay, where were we? Marla.
yeah, let me just finish answering this question, Shelley, and then I'll bow out.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, Jeff.
No problem. So lien sales appear to be a go. Okay. Now, let me answer that question with two caveats. We watch those questions from a statewide level. Okay. That does not mean that there isn't some city council somewhere that hasn't done a do-gooder like Pasadena, California, that has banned lien sales on a citywide level that I don't know about. Okay? Secondly, that's today. You could get a spike in COVID in November, and that could change everything again by the stroke of a governor's pen. So what we're saying in every state to every storage association is, if you're going to do lien sales, the expression that my dad taught me is get while the getting's good. So if you're going to do them, start, because you don't know what October is going to bring. You don't know what November is going to bring, and all that could change. But, and check with Shelley, you know, or check with us before you sell. A lot of my clients are calling me like, we're 2 weeks out, we're a week out, we're 3 days out from the sale. Has anything changed in our state? And we're answering those questions because, you know, things change. But as of today in Missouri, we are seeing lien sales. And Lonnie showed you on his site, there's lots of Missouri lien sales going right now. So we believe you can do them now, subject to change with very little notice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we are still sending out updates on the lien sales and any changes that we become aware of on statewide levels through our e-newsletters. So always welcome to call any of us or send me an email to get any updates on that.
Right. And my website, selfstoragelegal.com, is where I post my blogs. And that's what I blog about, right? You're not going to find me talking about Delta or restaurants I've eaten at. But if I find a quick development, that's sort of where I strike, you know, quickly and say like, whoa, I just found out. Ooh, right? Like Pasadena. And so if you want, I'm never going to try to sell you anything on selfstoragelegal.com, but if you want to subscribe, if I ever get anything, that tends to be like where I put it up the fastest. So obviously your state association website's also fast, but you know, belt and suspenders, make sure your pants don't fall down. So obviously stay tuned to your state association website. If you want to subscribe to my blog, that's another place where you might also get it. 2 places are always better than one. You know, I'm not making any money off the website, just another place you might also want to.
Sure.
But look, I know I got to yield the floor to Mo. Bless everybody, stay healthy, happy holidays. I know, Shelley, we talked about maybe getting one more quick little webinar in before the end of the year, but if I don't, happy holidays. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. I think we'll be back tomorrow with a chat, a Q&A session. So see y'all tomorrow.
Thank you, Jeff. We really appreciate it. And yes, he'll be back tomorrow for the panelist session at 10:45 tomorrow. So we'll have him back then.
Sharing my screen then. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So little bit behind. Sorry for my technical difficulties over here. My laptop decided it just had enough for today. So I'm going to fit in a Q&A with Marla, with Marcus and Millichap in the next 7 minutes, and then we'll get Mo ready for his seminar. And again, sorry for the running a little bit late, but as me and Tommy discussed first thing this morning, it seems to be the nature of the online conference, just the way it's going to go. So here we go. Marla, are you ready for the questions that we collected?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these came from owners from the Missouri Self-Storage Owners Association, and this is the first one. So I've heard COVID has been tough for a lot of businesses. I stay pretty busy at my own facility, but how is this impacting storage in Missouri?
Well, I'd say that it's a great time, folks, to be in the storage business. You know, we've been blessed for many years to see a rapid incline in valuation of our asset class compared to other asset classes. This year, we have stabilized quite well. Why? Social distancing. I mean, I feel like we've been social distancing before social distancing was cool. We've been social distancing for a long time in our business. But we were essential. We've been essential in Missouri. We've been essential throughout many states in this country. So that's lent itself well for us to continue to be stabilized this year. In talking with owners throughout our state and all corners of Missouri, occupancy continues to be strong. Why? The shutdown in many parts of the state, especially the urban areas, lent itself toward folks just not moving out. However, what we are seeing nationwide, and I think we're going to start seeing this also in our state, especially as it is possible that the overall economy may be dipping, and occupancies and houses, whether it is bankruptcy or whatever it is, we're going to see a consolidation of households. So that again lends itself well for storage. I will say that, we are seeing fewer auctions possibly. And I think there was a question along those lines that I just saw. But sheltering has pushed the vacancy. So we're not seeing as much vacancy even as before. So
yeah. Well, what question number 2 that came in, what is the best way to increase the value of my facility? What advice do you offer? Should we build a new building, offer other services?
Well, in broad general terms, without knowing, what the facility is or where it's located, the easiest way to add value to your facility, which is something anyone can do, is get your economic occupancy as close to your physical occupancy as possible. And what is that? In brief terms, it's making sure that the folks that your customers, that they are paying as close to street rate as possible. By doing that one simple thing, you are over time increasing the valuation of your property. And absolutely, there's many other profit centers for storage, but that is the easiest and the most inexpensive.
Yeah. A question from a Southeast Missouri owner asked, my wife and I are, and I think I am going to be ready to sell in the next year. What are some things we should be doing to prepare?
Well, I'm going to piggyback. We've had some great speakers, by the way, so far. And one of the things I'm thinking of is Tommy mentioned something with Storage Pug. He mentioned having rates that are premium rates close to the gate. I love that idea. Also, I'm going to piggyback a bit off of Jeff Greenberger. Absolutely. It is so important in every transaction. Don't do this yourself, guys. Absolutely hire a storage broker, someone who's a specialist in storage. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. And these are, pretty involved transactions. And I would say the best advice I can get is find a real estate lawyer that you trust in preparation for that. But also goes back to the last question. The best thing you can do on valuation for your property is cash flow as high as you possibly can. A lot of storage owners do this. They show pride of ownership. But in general terms, that's what I would suggest.
Good deal. I hear storage people talk about cap rates a lot. What is that, and what does that mean in Missouri?
So a cap rate, very simply, is your net operating income. What is that? That's the money you get after you've done paid your expenses. That's your net operating income divided by the sale price. That's a cap rate. Thanks to lower interest rates, thanks to increased investor interest in our asset class, cap rates have compressed, even in Missouri. And we are seeing and we are closing on storage facilities in tertiary markets at a 6 cap. Translation, values are really high, guys, in the state of Missouri. Great time to buy. It's a great time to sell. Money is so cheap to buy, and you know, values are pretty high. So.
Okay. All right, last question, and then we'll get hear from Mo with Live Oak Bank. Why should I use a broker or realtor when I could just work directly with an owner's purchase? When should I use a broker or realtor when I want to sell my facility, especially since I would have to pay a commission for that?
Well, good question. Part of the value representation and brokerage is ushering the buyer and the seller through, and I referenced this a second ago. These are our businesses that many of our ownership have owned for many years, and in many cases they're worth millions of dollars. And you need professionals from legal to accounting and brokers. So I am a specialized storage commercial broker, and that's what I do. So yeah. That would be the reason for it.
Yeah, good deal. And I think it would be well worth that commission. I know that we've had lots of discussions about just not knowing the deals that could be made if you're not using a broker to figure out what all is out there. So, okay, great. Good deal, Marla. We thank you for your information today, and thanks to everyone who sent in those questions. We really love how much, how interactive this event is being. And so I'm going to pass this over to Mo. I think Tommy has him set up. So, all right, welcome Mo, Live Oak Bank. We haven't formally met in person, but I would like to welcome you to your first event with the Missouri Self-Storage Owners Association. And
thank you very much. Actually had the pleasure of attending, I think 2 or 3 years. Enjoyed coming with my hotel room overlooking Busch Stadium. And so being kind of a baseball nut, that was always fun. Obviously in 2020, it's a completely different animal. So, so I appreciate the time to be able to come on here, and I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I do want to hit on some of the highlights. One of the things that's certainly a highlight is to everybody who's on the call, wow, this is really an impressive group of people providing information and leadership. And Live Oak does a lot of these, whether it be back in the days of being in person or doing these virtual. And you're doing a great job because the information you're getting is terrific, and the people that are doing it are great. So I'm going to just talk real quickly on financing options, with it primarily focused on SBA financing. That caveat being that please understand that it is not a one-size-fit-all, and that conventionally there may be some great options available to you. And so we're going to kind of try to take a look at each of those, but really focus on the SBA side of it, and if nothing else, provide you with some information, maybe dispel some of the misinformation that's out there, to be able to at least educate you on what may be available for you, whether it's for your first facility or facility number 5 or 6 or whatever it might be. So the good news is at Live Oak, we focus on being specialists in the industry that we lend in. So therefore, in the storage division that we have, all we do is lend in storage on storage deals. So that may be an acquisition, that may be a conversion, that may be a ground up deal, that may be a mobile storage deal or a portable storage deal. But we really try to have expertise on it so that we can, as banks always talk about being value added, we really believe that's important. We look at it as we're going to be a partner with the borrower. And if we, on these SBA loans, as you'll see, that it's long-term financing, so that we want to be a good partner. So we're going to do our best to try to provide you with our experience, our knowledge, our analytics, data, whatever it might be, to real easy, help you be more successful. Our division was started by Terry Campbell, who many of you would know. I refer to Terry as a walking, talking encyclopedia of storage. My background had been the banking side of it. Spending a great deal of time with some of the big banks. And so when we started the vertical in 2015, it was me and Terry, and said, okay, just go out and spread the word around the country that we'd like to try to do storage deals and partner with the right people. So it's a real value having Terry because of his expertise. He owns, I think he's closing on his 5th facility, maybe later this week. So it isn't just that we're lending in it, we're involved in it. We also have Bishesh Shrestha, who probably some of you have worked with. Great guy, extremely knowledgeable, hard worker. You'd be in great hands with him. Anna Taylor, boy, she works so hard and does such a good job and so much knowledge that it's great to have on our team as well. And then a new lender, Ann Mino. So, you know, I think that you'll see that everybody's very dedicated in doing things the right way. The other good news part of this is that as COVID hit and we got into getting through the government PPP loans, which we did a lot of, I was tasked with calling everybody in our portfolio to first and foremost see how they were health-wise and then check on the business. And I've said it many times since then, if nothing else, be very thankful that you're in the storage industry, because on those 250 or so calls, the 235 of them pretty much said business as usual. We're doing fine. We're doing well. They were saying maybe they didn't increase rates. Maybe it wasn't an increase in profitability, but they were profitable and they were sleeping at night. And so that is so reassuring and fantastic to hear. So let's say 235 said that. 13 of them actually said having record years. And you know, there are various reasons why they were doing well. We did have a couple that were struggling, and really one was in New York and just dealing with I think deal fatigue. Had 2 friends pass away from COVID, and I think just really worn out, and it was very unfortunate. But when you look at that, comparing it to some of the other industries we lend in, and some of the really sad stories you're hearing about fitness centers or restaurants or family entertainment or dentists or whatever it might be, fortunate to be in this industry. So that part is good. From that point in time when we really started gearing back into it, it's, as a team, we've never been busier. So I say that optimistically for everybody on the call, that if the opportunity is there, and that if you see that there, you know, you might want to at least start looking at purchasing a facility or doing a ground up deal or whatever it might be, that, as Marla said, money is really cheap. And on one of the programs that I'll talk about quickly, you're going to see a rate that is crazy cheap. So it is a good time, even though there are a lot of uncertainties, and even though, you know, looking forward, I know there's still a lot of answers that will be, or questions that will be answered, and but we're optimistic about where things stand in 2020 and going forward. So I'm going to just talk very quickly, as I say, about SBA options. Why would somebody choose an SBA loan? It's usually a question because there is quite a bit of misinformation out there about SBA loans. I would say there can be various reasons, but really the biggest thing about an SBA loan is that you are getting high leverage financing over a very long term. So, okay, how does that help? Well, I go back to a deal that I did. It was an acquisition here in our state of North Carolina, and it was a acquisition where the purchase price was $1 million, and we financed the loan, or we financed the acquisition, and the amount that we financed was $972,000. So at that point, it sounds pretty good. Now understand with it that actually when you do this as an SBA loan, where it's different than, let's say, what people think of when they do a conventional loan, is that these are looked at as a project. So in this deal, the purchase price was $1 million. the facility needed a little sprucing up and a little love. And the new buyers wanted to do some advertising, some promotional items to let people know that there were new owners and they were going to service them, you know, at the highest level. And you had some closing costs. So all in between the improvements and working capital and closing costs, it was roughly about $1.080 million. So that's what we base our loan off of. And with that, we will lend 90% of that if the cash flow works. And so in that deal, the borrowers came in with $108,000 and we financed $972,000 over a 25-year period of time. That opened the door up for people that may not think that they could qualify. And it allows people to be a business owner. And the thing that I always want people to understand when you're talking about an SBA loan, because they talk about, well, it's a government loan. With a bank like Live Oak, and if you're talking about an SBA 7A loan, understand that the decision is made at Live Oak Bank to approve your loan. The money comes out of the Live Oak Bank vault. So it's very much like a conventional deal. What we do, though, is we follow the SBA rule book because that provides us a guarantee against our loss. And that's important to the bank. That's what allows us to do the very low down payment or cash injection that is required of the borrower, and yet at the same time still have a healthy portfolio. Storage, again, has been the industry in general has been very good. So, you know, we're very comfortable with that high 90% loan to value. So that would really be the key to why somebody would be interested in let's say an SBA 7A loan. So there are two different SBA programs that are generally used for acquisitions or ground up deals or conversions. And that would be the SBA 7A as well as the 504. Both of them have advantages. We try to look at both of those as options for a borrower. One of the nice things about Live Oak, which is different from other banks, is nobody is paid an individual commission on any deal. So we don't have, as much as you try not to, you don't have kind of that what's in it for me approach. We look, how do we put together a fair deal to the borrower and as well as to the bank? As we say, we're partners and both people have to have it work out for them. So we're going to try to present both of those. So I'm going to just try to hit quickly and hit the highlights for both programs and how they have a little bit of, there's some differences which may determine which one is a better fit for you. So on the 7A loan, you're going to be looking at, on an acquisition, you're going to be looking at a 25-year term. On a ground up deal or any deal that has a significant amount of construction, you're going to be looking at a 26-year term. On ground up deals, when it's a 26-year term, it can be where you structure it with the first year being the construction phase, with that being interest only, and we'll put in an interest reserve to cover your payments for that period of time. Then you get your certificate of occupancy. Unfortunately, you don't make money right away. So we're going to put in 2 more interest reserve buckets for you. And we may put in as much as 24 payments of interest only money to make those for you while you're ramping up. And we'll also put in another interest reserve bucket that will cover operating deficits. Our goal is to get you to break even. And at that point, then to get you to be making the payments on your own. So it's nice because you have your 10% in, and then after that, we're going to try to carry you for up to 3 years. So that's a nice feature of the 7A program. The 7A program generally has, they can have variable rates, which would be a quarterly floating rate. Understand there's no floor or ceiling to it. So, you know, yes, you want to understand what that could do to your cash flow. Or there may be a 3-year fixed rate that resets every 3 years, or a 5-year resetting fixed rate. In some cases, slightly longer, but I want to give you what is most common. So that would really be the 7A program. The thing that people do like about it is they like the ability to have money built in for them to cover the risky period of time, and they're not having to out of pocket that money themselves. Typical to have, as I say, 10% cash injection if the cash flow allows. On an acquisition, you have historical cash flow. On a ground up or conversion deal, it's going to be projection based. So we're going to require a feasibility study, and we're going to look at it and and try to cash flow it from there by building in the right amount of money for the borrower to be able to get them to the point of break even. We're going to look for somebody who has a credit score of 650 or above, no felonies. Bankruptcies are very difficult, so I never say never, but they're tricky. So I oftentimes those are ones that we're not able to do, but no defaults on student or on government loans. So those are some things that you want to do. The other program out there is the SBA 504 program. And the 504 program is, I refer to it as a three-legged stool, where it's a loan structure between the bank, let's say Live Oak Bank, a certified development company, a CDC that works as, let's say, the liaison with the SBA, and the borrower. Okay, so in that one, in the kind of maximizing what you can do, the breakdown of it would be the bank will take a 50% first mortgage. The CDC will do a second mortgage, which is referred to as a debenture, up to 40%, and the borrower comes in with 10%. It seems pretty common that the question that the CDC asks right out of the gate is, does the borrowing entity currently own a self-storage facility? If the answer is yes, terrific. If the answer is no, then I would say probably be prepared to contribute an additional 5% on that loan. So at that point, you're looking at a 50, 35, 15 split. With that also, the bank loan can vary. Generally, you have let's say a amortization of 25 years with a term that can be anywhere. We're doing them right now with a 10-year term with a 25-year amortization. Rates on that would be similar to the 7A program, where you're looking in the mid to upper 4%, and depending on how long you want to have it fixed can alter your rate a little bit. But then the real highlight of the 504 is the second mortgage. The debenture pricing right now is absolutely crazy. It's just moved up, but it did move from last month with 2.26% fixed for 25 years. This month it was 2.40 fixed for 25 years. So that gets a lot of attention, and it is something I feel that on acquisitions, it is a really good product. I would highly encourage everybody to look at all options available to them. But with that type of fixed rate, that is something that can really help someone over a long period of time. How is it structured slightly different than the 7A? Well, with the, as I demonstrated on the 7A with a construction deal, and you had 3 interest reserve buckets. On the 504, you have 1 interest reserve bucket that will cover the construction phase. And then after that, it's up to the borrower. Okay, so there's no more working capital, no more, no interest reserves to make the payments. Also on the 504, after your debenture kicks in, then you're going to be paying principal and interest payments from there on out. So it's very common from the time you close the loan or at the time you get the certificate of occupancy for your debenture to be priced and to then fund your loan. That takes place generally 60 days after the either loan closing or certificate of occupancy. So there's a little brief period of time where you're not exactly sure what that debenture rate is going to be. So when I quote 2.4% right now, that is for deals that would have closed in July. So some different nuances with it, with that 25-year term. But again, I feel that real highlight is that debenture rate. I think that on acquisitions, the 504 is very, very good because you really don't need the interest reserve buckets for ramp up or for operating deficits. So in that way, it's not quite as hard as it is on a construction deal. So those are really the let's say the highlight items on the SBA lending. I've been doing this for a long time, and generally you do hear a lot of, well, I heard the SBA does this, and I heard the SBA does that. Make sure you're talking to somebody who really knows what they're talking about, because those stories, they're true, absolutely true. But they're usually, when somebody goes to a bank that really does not understand the SBA loan products and how it works, and they just trip up along the way. So one of the good questions to always ask if you are looking at an SBA loan is your bank what's called a PLP, which is a preferred lender? And that means that they have been, in a sense, certified by the SBA, that they know what they're doing, that they do it right, and that basically they police themselves to follow the SBA rule book, and so they get to approve their own loans. If you're not going to one of those, then it takes longer. You have to go through the SBA for actual approval. And I think that's where, when people say it takes too long, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So at Live Oak, I feel free to call us at any time. Questions are, how early should I talk to you guys? In a lot of ways, I say talk to us as early as possible, because at that point, in a way, humbly saying, we can show off. We can try to put you together with the people that are best for you. The last thing I'll say on it, when you're preparing to go to the bank, I always find this to be important, and people find it funny when I say it, but I think you'll understand why I say it, is do not be afraid to brag about how great you are. Don't be afraid to brag about how great the project is. Why are you putting your hard-earned money into this deal? Because that's going to resonate with the lender. They're going to see you're passionate about it. They're going to see that you have belief, that you have a good team around you, which is very important. They're going to see that you did your research, that you're ready to go with what you're doing, and that you're going to be successful. If more people brag, the more it can jump off the page, so the credit officer sees it and feels comfortable approving the loan. So that's very important. Just like if you're doing a ground up deal, or when you're doing projections. I don't like if somebody says, here are my projections, their worst case scenario. You're not putting your hard-earned money into this deal to do the worst case job, so why would you represent that that's what you're going to do? I get it that you're trying to show the bank you're not pie in the sky, but just provide us the numbers at 2 o'clock in the morning when you jump out of bed. Those are the numbers you really want. You got to understand, in credit guys, it's in their DNA that they're going to cut something. Okay, but if you already cut and they cut, now we got a lesser chance of getting the deal approved. So give it what it is. It can't be pie in the sky, but it certainly can be, if you can defend it and say, through hard work, through A, B, C, and D, this is how I'm going to hit these numbers. We like those numbers. And most of all, we like people who are passionate about what they're doing, and that they're going to be fully invested in it. And we feel very comfortable lending money with that. So that's really it. Hopefully I got us right about on time. I think 18 minutes worth.
Yeah.
So hopefully that did okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. We really appreciate that. I think from what you and Marla discussed, it's a good time to dig a little bit deeper into those deals and kind of see if that's where you want to go. Definitely reach out to Mo and talk about some financing options. Thanks again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for having me.
If you have any questions for Mo, you can send them directly to him or send them through me, and I'll make sure that he gets them.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mo. All right, Tommy, we are ready to talk with Tony with Tenant Property Protection, and I think it's about time to open up that vendor hall. All right.
Morning.
Good morning. All right, Tony, let me grab our Q&A questions that we had discussed a little bit earlier. If we can, tell us a little bit about Tenant Property Protection.
Sure. Well, our name kind of says what we do. We're an organization that works with self-storage owners and operators that are interested in providing their tenants an option to protect their contents while they're stored at the facility. Virtually every self-storage lease has a language in there which indicates that the tenant is responsible for protecting their items while they're on site, and that the facility is not. However, when something happens, typically the tenant goes to the owner, the manager, as their first contact for resolution. So we offer plans specifically for the self-storage industry, and these plans are designed to increase profits, sales, and provide peace of mind, not only to the operator, the owner, the manager, but clearly the tenant. We were voted by Inside Self Storage as the best property protection plan for 2018, 2019, and again in 2020. So we're really proud of that accomplishment.
Good deal. We get this a lot. What's the difference between tenant insurance and tenant protection plans?
Sure. Very common question. Tenant insurance is a two-party contract. It's a contract between the tenant and the insurance company. For a facility to sell a tenant insurance plan, there are some state regulations and guidelines that they have to adhere to. They have to either get an agent or a producer license. In the state of Missouri, it's a limited license, so it's not a huge bar to overcome. There are some fees associated with doing that, and there's some training requirements that are associated with doing that. Also, errors and omissions insurance might come into play when you're selling an insurance product, so that's something that you might want to take a look at. A protection plan service is a three-party agreement. It's an agreement between the tenant and the facility, and it becomes a condition of the lease. And then in consideration for a fee, the operator will protect the contents of the unit while they're in storage. If something should happen, that risk is then transferred over to the protection plan provider, and then the protection plan provider works with the tenant to resolve the issue. So there are no licensing requirements with a protection plan. There's no upfront investments or underwriting of claims or risk.
Okay, good deal. What plans does tenant property protection offer?
We offer very traditional protection plans for secured locked units. Standard plans range from, typically with us, 2,000 to 5,000 value. We can go much higher than that. If you go over 5,000, typically we do require some additional due diligence between the operator and the tenant to gather some details about more details as to what's stored in the facility. So again, we can go up as high as $40,000 worth of coverage, but again, with just some additional information. Additionally, we've recently just launched plans where we're offering plans for outside parking spaces for boat and RV, and it's an accidental damage waiver plan, and it's really designed to operate as a deductible reimbursement plan. The discussion earlier today from the legal perspective was talking about there's a different lease required for an outside parking spaces versus an inside unit, and totally agree. And facilities typically do require that those tenants of outside parking spaces have some sort of insurance coverage. So our plans are designed to supplement that coverage. So it's a great add-on opportunity, particularly with what we're seeing, what's happening with these expensive toys that people are having with COVID, and so it's a great opportunity for facilities that either allocate a percentage of their current space or are actually building or acquiring dedicated spaces for boat RV equipment.
Yeah, we are seeing quite an increase in the boat and RV, and Terry was actually going over that new product with me a couple weeks ago. And Tenant Property Protection is also doing their own virtual conference, I guess today and tomorrow. Correct. Kind of after ours. So if you can visit their website and join in, I know they've got a big group over there speaking as well. Okay, last question, and we'll all move over to the vendor hall. Hopefully a lot of you are taking advantage of that right now. The link is over in the chat, and Tommy also sent over that link as well. So Tony, what differentiates TPP from other service providers in the protection industry?
This is our only business. This is really what we do. So we're dedicated to providing protection plans to self-storage owners and operators. So we really are looking for owners that are interested in growing that part of their business. We provide training. We work collaboratively with owners and their managers to incorporate a sales process at the counter to encourage the sale of the plans. We can work with virtually all of the software platforms to incorporate a streamlined process so it doesn't become too labor intensive. So I think really what's clear is that our success is really linked to the facility success. So our goal is to work very, very closely with our facilities to try to make this a good opportunity for them. These plans can be the second largest revenue producing revenue stream for a facility. So we really want to help owners to accomplish that. So that's, I think, what primarily differentiates us.
Yeah, we've seen some, a lot of people tell me about their success with TPP and the additional revenue it's bringing in. So we really appreciate you guys joining us today. Thanks. And we really appreciate the support you give us and our association. I know Terry would have probably been in St. Louis with us this year, or you as well. And so we want to make sure that you guys know how much we appreciate your support. So, well,
thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. All right, Tony, good to be working with you. We will see you later.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Bye. Okay, back to me and Tommy. And
wow, what a day one.
Wasn't it fun? Well, except for my little technology glitch there.
I'm glad you made it back to us, though.
Me too. And I'm glad I'm not on my phone right now doing it. Okay. Anyway, but yeah, we got through it okay. Thanks to everybody that was here with us today. And please head over to the vendor hall. We've got the link posted in the chat, and then Tommy also sent that out through email. So you've got that there. It is as simple as 1, 2, 3. Click the link to the vendor hall and then select the vendor that you would like to connect with. We'll be doing the prize drawing for a couple of those prizes first thing in the morning. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the agenda. So Tommy's going to show us how to do that right over here. If you have questions or having trouble with any of that, reach out to me, sharris@MSSOA, or give me a call. All of our contact information is on the website. So Marla, you want to send us off for the day?
Been great. We are really, again, blessed to have some industry leaders from around the country. I learned, I've picked up some little great nuggets from you, Tommy, from really everybody that spoke. So thank you. And I know that our attendees, we've got 55 right now. We've had up to what, Shelley? 80 something today. We've had a lot.
I think it was 89 today.
Yeah.
So yeah, really great turnout.
So there's been fantastic industry nuggets. And Brian, last thoughts?
Well, as many of you know, I'm a real people person, so the virtual stuff has never been kind of my thing. But with the kids being out of school, it's taught me to enjoy it. And I actually had to turn off my video a couple of times because I was making faces and making notes because I couldn't write fast enough, and I was learning so much. Mm-hmm. Guys, don't think just because it's virtual, we can't learn the same thing we can in person. The only thing we're really missing is that personal touch, but all the information is here. All these people are going to put up the contact information for you, and don't hesitate to use that, because if they're on the conference, they actually care about your business. From Marla to Jeff to Tommy, just make sure you reach out, and they will be happy to talk with you. And please come over to the virtual hall and look at all of our vendors, because our vendors are one of the reasons that we're able to do stuff like this, and they help us put it on and take time out of their day. So I'd really appreciate if you guys would drop over, and maybe you get lucky and win something.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. All right, we're all going to head over to the vendor hall, and we will see everyone tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We will get started with Cindy Ashby, adding value to your assets, and speak with Lonnie with storage auctions, hear from Argus, and then have a panel discussion to wrap up the day, back with Brian, Jeff Greenberger, and Cindy Ashby. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.